Hello everyone. Welcome to Mr. Scary Stories channel, and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep. So before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. Story 1. The forest was thicker than Alina Carter remembered. Branches intertwined like skeletal hands. Dead leaves crunching under tires as the old SUV crawled up the dirt road. Bryce Holloway gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his eyes fixed ahead, pretending not to notice Alina's growing discomfort in the passenger seat. "You all right?" he asked. She forced a smile. "Yeah, just haven't been back out here in a while." Bryce chuckled. "It's the middle of nowhere, Lena, don't blame you." They passed a crooked sign, Everwood Cabin, private property. The wood was weathered, the paint almost gone. The letters looked clawed by time or worse. "Alina," Bryce continued, "you sure this is a good idea? Everyone under one roof again?" She hesitated. The truth was, no, she wasn't sure. But when Harper Quinn messaged out of the blue to suggest the reunion, she couldn't say no. It had been years since college, years since they'd all seen each other. Maybe this was the closure they all needed. "We'll be fine," she lied. Bryce shrugged, unconvinced. Minutes later, the SUV broke through the trees to an open clearing where a wooden lodge stood, 2 stories of dark timber and wide windows, half covered in ivy. Smoke curled from the chimney. Parked beside the lodge was another car, Harper's, no doubt. "Home sweet home," Bryce muttered, killing the engine. As they stepped out, the chilly air bit at their skin. The forest whispered around them, a constant hum of wind through dead leaves. Alina shivered, more from nerves than cold. The front door flew open, and Harper Quinn burst out with her signature grin. "Alina, you made it." Harper's hair was shorter now, dyed a fiery red, but her energy was the same, too loud, too bold. Alina smiled despite herself. "Hey, Harp." Harper hugged her tightly, then winked at Bryce. "And you brought the boyfriend." "We're not," Alina started. Bryce cut her off, grinning. "Not officially." Harper laughed. "Still the same awkward tension between you two, huh?" Behind Harper, another figure emerged, tall, glasses slightly askew, hands in pockets. "Liam Vance," Alina greeted, genuinely warm this time. Liam offered a small wave. "Hey Lena, long time." Inside, the cabin smelled of wood smoke and something cooking. Tasha Morgan was in the kitchen, dancing while stirring a pot. She turned with a bright smile when they entered. "There's my girl," Tasha said, wiping her hands on her jeans before hugging Alina. The 5 of them stood together for the first time in years. For a moment, it almost felt right, old friends reunited. They ate, drank, shared stories, laughed about college days. But beneath it all, something was off. Every time a branch snapped outside or the wind howled just right, Alina tensed. Later that night, they sat by the fireplace, the conversation turning to the creepy. "Anyone heard the stories about these woods?" Harper asked, swirling her wine. Bryce raised an eyebrow. "Besides the usual murder cabin legends." "No, seriously," Harper said. "There's an actual legend here about some psycho called the Carver." Liam scoffed. "Come on." "No joke," Harper insisted. "Some masked freak who used to live out here. Supposedly he'd kidnap people and whittle them." Tasha made a face. "Whittle like carve?" Harper nodded, grinning. "Yep, carved his victims up like wood, made statues, little figurines, said it made them immortal." "Bullshit," Bryce said, chuckling. Alina wasn't laughing. She remembered hearing similar stories when she was younger, whispers of a craftsman turned killer. "Locals said the Carver's still out here," Harper added, "still making art." Liam shook his head. "Urban legend." "Still creepy," Tasha murmured. They slept late. the fire dying into embers. Black circle. Morning came gray and cold. Alina stepped outside with coffee, the mist hanging low over the trees. That's when she noticed it, a carved stick figure, hanging from a branch near the tree line. Roughly shaped, humanoid with its arms spread wide. Alina. She turned to see Bryce behind her. Just weird, she said, pointing to the figure. Probably Harper's idea of a prank. Maybe. But when they gathered for breakfast, no one claimed responsibility for the wooden figurine. Harper shrugged. Maybe you've got a fan. They laughed it off, but unease lingered. Black circle. Later they drove to the nearest town for supplies. The general store was cramped, old, smelling of pine and gasoline. An old man behind the counter eyed them coldly. Beside him stood a younger man with a gaunt face and tired eyes, Silas grim. "You folks staying at Everwood?" Silas asked. Harper smiled. "Yeah, weekend getaway." Silas shook his head slowly. "Be careful." "Why?" Harper teased. "Because of the carver." Silas didn't laugh. "Because some legends have teeth." Harper chuckled, but Alina caught the seriousness in Silas's gaze. "Anything we should know?" Alina asked softly. Silas glanced around, then whispered, "If you see carvings, go back, don't stay." Bryce chuckled nervously. "Yeah, we'll keep that in mind." They left with their supplies, but Alina couldn't shake the feeling that Silas wasn't just a superstitious local. Black circle. That night the wind howled louder. The trees seemed closer. Harper joked about summoning the carver, laughing into the darkness beyond the porch. But in the woods, unseen, a figure stood. A mask of pale wood, a long blade sharpened to a whittler's precision, watching. Waiting. And as the friends laughed, the carver began carving, slowly, patiently, shaping a new figure in the dark. One for each of them. Because the carver was still here. And he was always looking for new art. The wind had a voice that night, high, sharp, threading through the trees like it was whispering warnings no one could understand. Alina Carter couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, then gave up entirely, sitting by the window in her room upstairs. The lodge was wrapped in heavy dark, the only light coming from the moon, silver and thin. She thought about what Silas Grimm said in town. "If you see carvings, go back, don't stay." She exhaled, watching her breath fog against the cold window pane. Somewhere out in that darkness, she swore she saw a shadow move between the trees. She blinked, it was gone. Black circle. The morning came dull and damp. Fog still clung to the earth like the sky had fallen overnight. Tasha Morgan volunteered to walk to the nearby stream to wash dishes. She liked the solitude, the peace, the sound of water. She wandered down the narrow path, basket of dishes in hand, humming to herself. The stream was quiet. Birds didn't chirp this morning. She knelt by the water, dipping plates into the cold, clear current. Then a noise. A faint scraping, like metal on wood. She paused, listening. Nothing. Then again, a long, slow scrape, closer this time. "Hello," Tasha called, standing, eyes scanning the woods. Silence. She shrugged it off, turning back to the dishes. That's when she saw it, directly across the stream on the opposite bank. A figure. Unmoving. Tall, wrapped in dark clothing, face masked with what looked like bleached wood, carved into a grotesque, expressionless face. Tasha froze. Bryce, Liam, quit messing around. The figure remained silent. Then it stepped forward, slow, deliberate. Tasha backed away, breath caught in her throat. The figure raised a hand, revealing a long, thin blade, curved like a whittler's knife. Tasha turned and ran, feet stumbling over roots, heart pounding. But the figure moved fast, too fast. She felt something sharp slash across her calf. She screamed, tumbling into the dirt. She crawled, sobbing, looking back. The carver stood over her, silent. He knelt, his mask tilting as if examining her like a piece of wood. And then, with precision, he made his first cut. Black circle. At the cabin, Alina started worrying. Tasha's been gone too long, she said, packing. Bryce shrugged, probably taking her time. She loves the woods. Alina wasn't convinced. Something gnawed at her gut. I'm going to look. Bryce stood. I'll come. Harper waved them off. You're all paranoid. She's probably sitting by the stream on a rock, living her nature fantasy. But Alina and Bryce grabbed flashlights and headed out. The path to the stream was narrow, winding through tight trees. Alina, Bryce whispered, you think it's the guy from the store, that Sela's creep. I don't know. They reached the stream. Tasha wasn't there. Her basket was tipped over, plates scattered, some broken. Alina knelt by the ground. There was blood. A trail of red dots leading into the woods. Shit, Bryce muttered. They followed the trail, nerves tight, flashlights bouncing off trunks and brambles. Then Bryce's light caught something hanging from a low branch. A small wooden figurine. Crude but unmistakably Tasha, same hairstyle, same dress. Alina's skin went cold. Bryce swallowed hard. Okay, this is bad. They turned back, racing to the cabin. Black circle. When they burst in, Harper and Liam looked up, startled. What the hell? Harper asked. Tasha's missing, Alina panted. And we found a doll, a carving. Liam paled. A carving. Yes, like the carver story. Harper's smile vanished. This isn't funny anymore, Alina snapped. Panic began to settle in. They argued, shouted, accused, Bryce blaming Harper for mocking the legends, Harper blaming Alina for choosing the cabin. Liam, quiet but sharp, interrupted. Phones. They all checked. No service. The storm last night probably knocked out the tower, Bryce muttered. We need to leave, Alina said. They grabbed bags, keys, and raced to the car. But the SUV's tires were slashed. Deep, deliberate cuts. Fuck, Bryce yelled, kicking a tire. Liam ran to the backup car, Harper. The windshield was shattered, the battery dead. They were trapped. We'll walk, Alina said. We'll hike to the road. Harper shook her head. It's miles away. Then we start now. But as they gathered supplies, a heavy knock sounded from the porch. They froze. Another knock, slow, rhythmic. Bryce peeked through the curtain. No one was there. Then a scream. Distant from the woods. Tasha, Alina whispered. Bryce grabbed a fireplace poker. We need to find her. Or we're next, Harper muttered. Black circle. They headed into the woods, flashlights cutting weak paths. Then a voice. Tasha, Bryce called. Here, a faint reply. They ran toward it. But when they reached a clearing, they stopped dead. Tasha was tied upright to a tree, ropes cutting into her skin. Her eyes were open, glazed, lips trembling. Her arms carved. Slices, shallow but precise, ran up and down her limbs, skin peeled in patterns like bark stripped from wood. She tried to speak, but her tongue was sliced, barely intelligible. Alina sobbed, "Oh God." Bryce rushed to cut her down. Then a whistle, sharp, clear. From the trees, the carver emerged. Silent, tall, masked. Harper screamed. Bryce swung the poker, but the carver dodged easily, slicing Bryce's thigh. A thin, clean cut. Alina grabbed Bryce, pulling him back. The carver advanced, but then Liam hurled a rock, hitting him in the shoulder. The carver paused, then retreated into the dark, vanishing like smoke. They collapsed to the ground, gasping. Tasha died minutes later, blood loss too severe. They wept. Harper stood, trembling. We need to go now. But Alina stared into the woods. She could still hear the sound of whittling. Slow, deliberate. Because the carver wasn't done. He had more statues to make. The cabin was no longer a shelter. It was a coffin waiting to be sealed. They brought Tasha's body back, wrapping her in a blanket. No one spoke. The shock hung heavy in the air, as palpable as the stink of blood on their hands. Alina stared at the wooden figurine they'd found by the stream, still clutched in her trembling hands. It was Tasha, her shape, her hair. The carver had crafted it long before killing her. Why would someone do this? Harper whispered, packing, her bravado from before utterly gone. Because he's sick, Bryce muttered, limping slightly from the slice in his thigh. And we're next. Liam sat slumped in a chair, glasses askew, eyes hollow. He's playing with us. Alina shook her head. Not playing, he's making something. He said he was making art. Bryce scoffed. Art, he carved her up like wood. A long silence followed. Then Liam spoke, his voice distant. We should have never come back here. Alina frowned. What are you talking about? Liam rubbed his face. You don't remember, sophomore year, the retreat, the bonfire. It clicked in Alina's mind like a door unlocking. Years ago, their college group had visited a rural town not far from here. There, been a bonfire, drinking, dares. A local boy had wandered into their group, awkward, quiet, interested in wood carving. Harper snapped her fingers. Sila's that weird kid. Yes, Liam said. We all made fun of him, told him he was creepy. Bryce's face tightened. I remember. He ran off after we told him to whittle himself a girlfriend. Alina's stomach twisted. You think? Liam nodded. Sila's Grim, the guy at the store. Harper laughed bitterly. Jesus Christ, this is payback. Bryce stood, packing. So what? He waited years to start carving people up. Maybe, Liam said. Maybe he's always been carving. We just woke him up. They sat in silence, the weight of old cruelty crushing the air. I want to find him, Alina said, eyes burning. Find Sila's, ask him. Bryce shook his head. He's probably the carver. Maybe, but we need to know. Black circle. Against better judgment, they decided to find Silas's cabin. Bryce stayed behind to rest his leg. Alina, Harper, and Liam set out. The forest felt alive, watching, breathing. Every snapped twig sent shivers down their spines. They reached the general store by dusk. It was closed, abandoned looking. But nearby stood a small shack, half-rotted, smoke trailing faintly from a crooked chimney. They approached carefully. Sila's, Alina called. Silence. Then the door creaked open, and Sila stood there, gaunt, eyes sunken. What do you want? Alina stepped forward. We need your help. Sila stared at them, then sighed. You shouldn't have come back. Is it you? Harper demanded. Are you the carver? Silas's face twisted in pain. No. Liam scoffed. Right. Silas shook his head. I know who he is. I've seen him. Alina's breath caught. Then who? Silas stepped aside, letting them in. The shack smelled of pine, smoke, and old books. He was my brother, Silas said. Name was Edwin. He was a carver obsessed with making things perfect. Our father. He wasn't kind. Forced Edwin to whittle wood for hours. Punished him if he messed up. He sat heavily in a chair. One day, Edwin snapped. Killed our father with his own carving knife. Disappeared into the woods, became something else. Silas stared into the fire. He carves people now, says they're his best work. Alina whispered, Why didn't you warn us? I tried, Silas muttered, but no one listens to old drunks. Liam folded his arms. So how do we stop him? Silas looked up, eyes hollow. You don't. The woods are his now. Harper shook her head. We have to try. Silas sighed. There's an old sawmill deep in the forest. That's his gallery. Alina's heart sank. Gallery. Silas nodded. Where he keeps the ones he's finished. They thanked him and left, a map in hand drawn by Silas's trembling fingers. Night was falling fast. They needed to return, but the woods had changed. Paths they took before were gone, replaced by thicker trees, like the forest had shifted. And then the whistle. That same sharp, piercing sound. Harper spun around, flashlight flickering. Where? Movement in the trees. Then a figure lunged, the carver. Harper screamed, bolting through the underbrush. Alina and Liam ran the other way. Harper ran blindly, heart in her throat, crashing through branches, the sound of footsteps too close behind. She tripped, sprawling into the mud. The carver stood over her, blade glinting. Please, she sobbed, don't. He raised the knife, but then gunfire rang out. Silas. He fired twice, missing, but the noise drove the carver back into the dark. Silas helped Harper up. Told you, the woods are his. They hurried back to the cabin, shaken. Bryce stood at the door, eyes wide. What the hell happened? Alina swallowed hard. We know where he is. Bryce helped Harper inside. Her clothes torn, skin scratched but alive. Liam closed the door, locking it. We can't wait. We find the sawmill. We end this. Alina nodded, resolve hardening. Because one thing was clear. They wouldn't survive another night. And in the woods, the carver sat by candlelight, whittling another figurine. Alina's face. Her time was coming. Dawn barely touched the horizon when Alina Carter zipped up her jacket, slung a flashlight over her shoulder, and checked the dull hatchet Bryce had found in the tool shed. Bryce hobbled behind her, his wounded leg hastily bandaged. His face was pale but determined. You don't have to come, Alina said. Bryce gave her a hollow chuckle. Leaving you to face that freak alone, not a chance. Harper sat by the cold fireplace, bruised and shaken from the night before. She didn't speak. Her eyes were distant, staring into nothing. Liam loaded the last supplies into a small pack, water, rope, a flare gun from the emergency kit. Silas said the sawmill's 3 miles southeast, Liam muttered. We stick together. They all nodded, unspoken dread hanging between them. Outside, Silas Grimm stood waiting, a rusty shotgun in hand. You're sure about this? He asked. We don't have a choice, Alina said. Silas looked down the tree line. If you find him, don't hesitate. They entered the woods, flashlights bobbing between shadowy trunks. The air was thick, humid despite the cold, like the trees themselves exhaled a damp breath. No birds, no animals, just wind. And beneath it, the occasional sound of whittling. Black circle. An hour in, they found the first marker, a wooden figure nailed to a tree. A human shape, twisted and crude, with ropes carved around its neck. Alina, Bryce whispered, pointing to the base of the tree. Fresh footprints, big, heavy. He's close. They pressed on, hearts pounding. Eventually, the trees parted into a clearing where the sawmill stood, a decaying beast of timber and rusted metal. The roof sagged, boards missing, windows dark. Alina swallowed hard. This is it. They stepped inside. The stench hit first, rot, mildew, and something worse, death. Sunlight filtered through broken slats, casting thin lines across the floor. And then they saw them. Figures. Rows of carved statues stood like a morbid gallery, human-sized, shaped like people. Some wooden, others not. Alina approached one, heart sinking. It was a man, eyes hollowed, mouth sewn shut, flesh petrified like wood. His arms were etched with spirals, skin stripped in patterns. "Oh my God," Harper whispered. "They're real," Liam said, voice shaking. Each statue was a person carved, mutilated, preserved like art. Bryce stumbled back, covering his mouth. He made them into sculptures. A noise, footsteps above. They looked up. A shadow moved across the second-floor walkway. "It's him," Alina hissed. They split, Bryce and Harper circling right. Alina and Liam left. Alina climbed the rotted stairs slowly, hatchet gripped tight. At the top, she stepped onto the walkway. Dust and debris crunched underfoot. Then a flash of movement. Alina swung, but the figure was gone. She pushed forward, Liam behind her. Then something hit her hard from the side. She slammed into the railing, the hatchet skittering across the floor. The carver stood over her, mask expressionless, blade glinting. Liam charged, tackling him, but the carver was strong, tossing Liam aside like a rag doll. Alina crawled for the hatchet, fingers brushing it. The carver grabbed her ankle, dragging her back. Then a flare fired. It struck the carver in the shoulder, bursting in flame. He howled, the first sound they'd ever heard from him, stumbling back, batting at the fire. Bryce stood below, flare gun smoking. "Run," he shouted. Alina grabbed the hatchet, slashed at the carver's leg. He staggered. Liam pulled her up, and they fled down the stairs. But the carver recovered fast, leaping down, limping but still deadly. They sprinted through the maze of statues, but Harper screamed. She'd been caught, dragged by the hair, kicking and screaming. Alina turned, heart pounding. "No." Bryce grabbed her arm. "We'll come back for her." They burst out of the sawmill, lungs burning. But inside, Harper struggled. The carver pinned her to a workbench, his knife tracing her cheek. "Please," she sobbed, "don't." The carver tilted his head, as if admiring her shape. Then his blade cut, shallow, deliberate. Outside, Alina heard her screams. She grabbed Bryce's flare gun, reloaded, and ran back inside. Liam followed, wielding a crowbar. They burst in to see Harper half-carved, blood trailing down her limbs, her face pale. The carver turned, unfazed. Alina fired. The flare struck his mask, shattering it partially, revealing a scarred, hollow face beneath. He staggered. Liam swung the crowbar, smashing his arm. Alina grabbed Harper, dragging her away. Bryce attacked too, but the carver slashed his side, sending him crashing into a pile of timber. Alina, with Harper in tow, ran. Liam threw himself at the carver, buying time, but the carver stabbed him through the stomach. Liam gasped, blood pouring, but he grabbed the carver's wrist, holding him back long enough. "Alina, go." With tears in her eyes, Alina fled with Harper. Outside, Bryce stumbled after them, wounded but alive. Behind them, the carver stood in the doorway, mask half gone, watching. Waiting. The gallery wasn't finished. Not yet. The woods swallowed them whole. Alina Carter half-dragged Harper Quinn, whose body was slick with blood, her breath shallow, eyes fluttering. Bryce Holloway stumbled behind, pressing his side where the carver had slashed deep. They didn't know how far they'd run, only that the sawmill was behind them, and Liam was dead. Alina collapsed against a tree, gasping. Harper groaned, barely conscious. "We need to stop the bleeding," Bryce wheezed, collapsing beside them. Alina ripped off her jacket, pressing it to Harper's wounds. "We have to go back," Alina said, voice shaking. "We can't leave Liam there." Bryce grabbed her wrist, eyes fierce. "If we go back, we die. We can't just leave him, we." "He knew what he was doing," Bryce snapped. "He bought us time." Alina clenched her fists, eyes burning. Liam was gone, Tasha was gone, Harper was dying. And the carver was still out there. Black circle. They found an old hunter's shack deeper in the woods, rotten, leaning sideways but shelter. Inside, Alina laid Harper down, trying to clean her wounds with water from a barrel. "She won't make it," Bryce muttered, sitting heavily. "We're all dead." "No," Alina whispered, "we're not." She stood, packing. "He's playing with us, picking us off. He thinks we're weak." Bryce looked up, eyes dark. "He's not human." "I don't care, we kill him." Bryce laughed bitterly. "With what?" Alina scanned the shack, found rusted tools, a hatchet, old nails, rope. She gathered them. "We set a trap, we make a stand." Bryce shook his head. "You're insane." "No, I'm done running." Black circle. They worked through the night. Alina sharpened the hatchet, Bryce rigged a tripwire with nails. They prepared spikes, pits, anything. Harper drifted in and out of consciousness, whispering, "Don't let him carve me." Alina squeezed her hand. "I won't." As dawn approached, the forest grew quiet. Too quiet. Then the whistle. Alina stood, hatchet in hand. Bryce readied a broken spear, fashioned from wood, and a rusted blade. A shadow moved between trees. Then the carver stepped into view, mask half broken, revealing a grotesque scarred face, eyes hollow. He stared, tilting his head. Alina stepped forward. "You want me? Come get me." The carver charged. Bryce triggered the tripwire, spikes shot up, grazing the carver's leg, making him stumble. Alina swung the hatchet, slicing his arm. He roared, backhanding her across the face. Bryce stabbed with his spear, but the carver caught it, snapping it. He grabbed Bryce by the throat, lifting him, squeezing. Alina lunged, driving the hatchet into the carver's side. He dropped Bryce, spinning, slamming Alina into the wall. She gasped, the wind knocked from her lungs. The carver raised his knife, then a flare exploded into his back. Harper, barely standing, she'd fired the last flare gun. The carver staggered, flames catching his coat. Bryce tackled him, driving them both into the pit of nails. Both screamed. Alina crawled to the edge, the carver impaled, Bryce bleeding heavily. "Finish him," Bryce gasped. Alina grabbed the hatchet, climbed down. The carver tried to rise, pulling himself off the spikes, blood pouring. Alina stood over him, heart pounding. "No more." She swung, the hatchet burying in his head. Again. Again. Until he stopped moving. Silence. She collapsed, sobbing. It was over. Black circle. They pulled Bryce from the pit, barely alive. Alina carried Harper. Hours later, rescuers found them, alerted by a passing ranger who saw smoke. They survived. But in her dreams, Alina still hears the whistle. And sometimes, deep in the woods, someone finds wooden figurines, new ones. Because art never truly dies. The hospital smelled like bleach and cold air. Alina Carter sat beside Harper's bed, watching her chest rise and fall slowly under the thin blanket. Tubes, wires, machines, but Harper was alive. Scarred, shaken, but alive. Bryce lay in another room down the hall, recovering from the puncture wounds and broken ribs. He'd survived too, though his laugh, when it came, was quieter now, less certain. Alina had been stitched up, her bruises fatting, but nothing inside her felt healed. The police had combed the woods. They found the sawmill, the pit of nails, the gallery of carved victims. They called it the work of a serial killer, a madman in a mask. That's all they could explain. They never found the carver's body. No trace where they'd left him. No blood, no corpse. Just gone. Alina knew better. You can't kill a shadow. Black circle. Days passed. Discharged, Alina returned to the city, back to her apartment, her job, her life. But nothing fit anymore. She couldn't close her eyes without hearing the whistle. couldn't stand the smell of fresh-cut wood without feeling her skin crawl. She kept the hatchet cleaned, polished, hidden under her bed, just in case. Harper recovered slowly. She rarely spoke. Her hands trembled when they passed carpentry stores or displays of wooden figures. Bryce reached out sometimes. They talked, even laughed. But the space between them remained, carved by fear, trauma, and memories of blood. Black Circle. One evening, Alina passed a street vendor selling wooden carvings, animals, people, abstract forms. She paused, heart tightening. Among them, a small figure, a woman holding a hatchet. Sorry. She picked it up, examining it. Crude, rough, but the resemblance was clear. Where'd you get this? She asked the vendor. He shrugged. A man drops them off, leaves before we open. Alina stared down at the figure. A signature was carved on the base, a spiral, the same symbol carved on the victim's flesh. Her pulse quickened. He's still out there, she whispered. The vendor raised an eyebrow. Ma'am. She put the figure down and walked away, heart thudding. She knew she'd never escape it. The carver wasn't dead. Maybe he never was human to begin with. She saw his face when she slept, heard the whittle of blade on wood. Somewhere in some dark place, he was still carving. Preparing. Because the last cut is never truly the last. And Alina knew, one day he'd come for her again. But next time she'd be ready. Hatchet in hand. Story 2. Evan Mercer had always prided himself on being ordinary. His life was structured, predictable. Morning coffee, 8 hours at the architecture firm, the gym every other night, dinner with Natalie when schedules aligned. Routines kept his mind steady, something he learned to cherish after years of childhood instability. But that was before the dreams began. At first they were small flashes, an alley bathed in green fog, whispers that sounded like his name but in a language he didn't know, faces without eyes, smiling from the dark. He brushed them off, stress maybe, a product of too many late nights drafting designs under dim lights. But then his body started aching, deep, in places where no stretch or exercise could reach. Sometimes it was his stomach, a gnawing pressure like something was curling inside him. Other times his limbs felt stretched, as if his bones wanted to grow beyond the limits of his skin. One morning, he woke to find crescent-shaped bruises along his ribs, like fingers had gripped him in his sleep. Natalie Hale was the first to notice. She stood in the kitchen doorway that morning, arms folded, watching him scratch his stomach for the 3rd time in a minute. "You should see a doctor," she said, concern coloring her voice. Evan forced a chuckle, pouring black coffee into his mug. "I'm fine. Probably pulled something at the gym." Natalie walked over, her eyes soft but stern. She gently lifted his shirt without asking. The bruises stood stark against his pale skin. "Evan, this isn't normal." "I know." But he didn't, not really. Because deep down, something whispered that this wasn't pulled muscles or stress. Something was inside him. Black Circle. Work didn't help. By midday, Evan's hands trembled so badly he struggled to hold a pencil straight. The designs on his desk, sleek commercial complexes and pedestrian parks, blurred before his eyes. His coworker Philip clapped him on the back. "You look like shit, man. Bad sushi." Evan forced a grin. "Yeah, something like that." The truth was uglier. Every time he sat still, he felt something shifting beneath his skin, like a muscle spasm but longer, smoother, like a snake stretching after a nap. That night, standing before his bathroom mirror, he peeled his shirt off and inspected his stomach. His eyes caught movement, not big, not obvious, but a ripple just beneath his ribs. For a moment, he thought he imagined it. But then it happened again. He touched the spot, pressing gently, and his skin felt hollow, as if there was space beneath the surface. Something throbbed lightly under his fingers, not a heartbeat but a pulse. His breath quickened. "You're just tired," he told his reflection. "Sleep." But as he turned to leave, he swore his reflection smiled. And he hadn't. Black circle. That night, Evan placed his phone on his nightstand, camera facing the bed, recording. He needed proof, something to show Natalie or himself. When he woke the next morning, he didn't remember much. Only fragments of a dream, a door in his chest, swinging open, shadowy hands pulling themselves out. He checked the footage. Hours passed uneventfully, just him tossing and turning. But then, around 3:17 a.m., his body sat up straight. His eyes were open but glassy, unfocused. And then he spoke. "Do you see me yet?" His voice whispered but lower, guttural. The phone's mic struggled to catch all the words, but the next was clearer. "Let me out." Evan froze, watching himself lean forward, smiling. Then faintly, a shadow passed the edge of the frame. No clear form, just movement, something alive. He slammed the phone down, bile rising in his throat. It wasn't a dream, something was here. Black circle. Natalie came over that evening, bringing groceries and warm concern. When Evan showed her the footage, her face paled. "Jesus, Evan, that's not normal." "No kidding," he muttered. "But the doctors, they'll say I'm sleepwalking, some disorder." "You need help." "I need answers." Natalie took his hand gently. "Then let me help." He wanted to argue, but he was tired, his bones ached, his mind swam. He squeezed her hand instead. That night Natalie stayed over, insisting she'd watch him sleep. But around midnight, Evan bolted upright, eyes wide open. Natalie sat up too, startled. "Evan." He didn't respond. His head turned slowly, too slow to be human, as if joints resisted the motion. And then, in a voice layered with something inhuman beneath it, he said, "You're in the way." Natalie grabbed his shoulders, shaking him. "Evan, wake up." His body trembled, and then collapsed back into sleep. Natalie didn't sleep at all. Black circle. By morning, she had contacted a therapist, Dr. Evelyn Carter, an old professor of hers, now specializing in extreme psychotic disorders. Dr. Carter agreed to a consult. In her office, Evan described the dreams, the sensations, the recordings. He didn't mention the shadow, not yet. Dr. Carter listened carefully, scribbling notes. "It could be a form of parasomnia," she said gently. "A sleep disorder that causes movement and speech during sleep. Coupled with stress, it can manifest severely." "That doesn't explain the bruises," Evan said quietly. "Sleepwalking injuries," she suggested. "But to be safe, we'll run some tests." But tests came back normal. Nothing physically wrong. Blood work, scans, all clear. Yet the bruises grew darker, the sensation stronger. And the voice, it whispered when he was awake now. Soft just behind his ear. "Let me show you." Black circle. By the week's end, Evan began losing time. Minutes vanishing, hours even. Once he found himself in the bathtub, fully clothed, water running cold. Natalie begged him to stay with her, but he refused. "I'll hurt you," he said. "I feel it coming." She cried, but he didn't stay. Instead, he locked himself in his apartment, windows covered, mirrors draped. Except one mirror remained in his bathroom, cracked but intact. He stared into it one night, whispering, "What are you?" And his reflection smiled again. This time it spoke. "I am what you buried." The smile widened. "I am inside you, Evan." He threw a lamp at the mirror, shattering it, panting heavily. But the voice continued without the mirror. "You're already mine." And beneath his skin, he felt it, not just movement. Growth. Something was gestating. Waiting. Evan Mercer stopped sleeping. Every time his eyelids drooped, the whispers grew sharper, clearer, closer. He drank coffee until his stomach churned, showered in cold water, anything to stay awake. But the body always betrays the mind. And when he inevitably dozed off on his couch, the dreams returned. The alley, the green fog, the door in his stomach swinging open. But this time, something stepped out of it. A figure hunched and wrong, limbs too long, flesh gray and wet, eyes non-existent, mouth a stitched scar across a sagging face. The smell of rotting meat and mildew hung heavy. "You invited me," it whispered, voice a brittle echo. "I didn't ask." Evan bolted awake, sweat freezing his shirt to his back. His stomach burned, his skin hot and tight like it was stretched too far. When he pulled up his shirt, the bulge was undeniable. A swelling just below his ribs, pulsing faintly, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. His knees buckled, and he vomited into the sink bile and streaks of blood. He was changing. Black circle. Natalie Hale hadn't heard from Evan in 3 days. Her texts went unread, calls unanswered. Desperate, she reached out to Marcus Boyd, Evan's old college friend and former roommate. Marcus was the rational one, the one who could reach Evan when others couldn't. When she explained Evan's condition, Marcus was skeptical until she showed him the sleep recordings. He watched in silence as Evan sat up mid-sleep, smiling in the dark, his voice guttural. "Do you see me yet?" Marcus paled. "That's not him." "I know," Natalie whispered, "but I don't know what else to do." Marcus rubbed his jaw uneasy. "I have a friend. He's into weird stuff, occultism, possessions. Maybe he can explain this." "You think this is supernatural?" Marcus shrugged. "Either that or Evan's losing his mind. Either way, we have to see him." Black circle. Meanwhile, Evan stood before his only remaining mirror in the bathroom. The surface was cracked from his previous outburst, but still enough to reflect. "Show yourself," he demanded. The glass fogged, despite the room being cold. Then the fog cleared, and the reflection didn't match him. It stood taller, thinner, its eyes hollow black sockets, mouth sewn shut. Its body twitched, head jerking side to side. "I am inside you," the reflection whispered, "closer than your shadow." "Who are you?" Evan hissed. Its stitched mouth widened grotesquely. "I am your evolution." The reflection's chest split open in the glass, revealing ropes of meat and bone, something writhing deep within. Evan stumbled back, heart pounding. The skin on his own stomach itched, burned. He scratched and scratched until blood welled under his nails. Under his flesh, something moved, slithering up just beneath the surface. Then came the voice, no longer just inside his head. From his own throat. "Let me out." Black circle. That night, Marcus and Natalie arrived at Evan's apartment. The door was unlocked, the place dark, windows blacked out with garbage bags. The stench hit them first, sweat, rot, old food, and something worse. "Evan," Natalie called softly. No answer. They stepped carefully through the apartment. The walls were scribbled with symbols, spirals, jagged lines, all drawn in what looked like dried blood. Marcus picked up a notebook on the coffee table. It was filled with sketches, a figure always the same, tall, faceless, mouth sewn shut, limbs too long. Natalie trembled. "That's him. That's the thing in his dreams." From the bedroom came the sound of wheezing. They found Evan on the bed, shirtless, his body drenched in sweat. His abdomen was distended, swollen unnaturally. His skin was pale, veins darkened to black. His eyes fluttered open, bloodshot. "Get out," he croaked. Natalie knelt beside him, taking his hand. "We can help you." But Evan's hand spasmed, his fingernails digging into her wrist. Marcus pulled her back, but not before Evan's body convulsed, his back arching. His mouth opened wide, too wide, and a voice emerged, guttural and wrong. "She belongs to me." Marcus grabbed a nearby lamp, smashing it across Evan's head, stunning him. "Get the salt," Marcus ordered. "Hurry." Natalie scrambled through her purse, pulling out a small salt pouch, Marcus's idea, borrowed from his occultist friend. She scattered salt around the bed, forming a crude circle. Evan thrashed, howling, but the moment the circle completed he collapsed, gasping for breath. The apartment went still. Natalie sobbed, clutching Marcus's arm. What is happening to him? Marcus stared at Evan's grotesque bulge under his skin, trembling. "He's being eaten from the inside." Black circle. Evan woke hours later, weak but lucid. Natalie sat beside him, her wrist bandaged. Marcus stood by the door, holding a metal pipe, just in case. "I'm sorry," Evan whispered, tears in his eyes. "I can't stop it." Natalie stroked his hair gently. "What is it, Evan? What's inside you?" He swallowed hard. "It calls itself the Wretch." Natalie exchanged a glance with Marcus. "I see it in mirrors," Evan continued. "It talks to me. It shows me things, horrible things." "Like what?" Marcus asked quietly. "Me," Evan whispered. "Dead, hung from the ceiling, smiling, or worse, alive but not me, something wearing my body." Marcus's grip on the pipe tightened. "This thing, how did it start?" Evan shook his head. "I don't know, the dreams, the bruises, then the voice." He looked at Natalie, eyes pleading. "It's killing me or replacing me." Marcus made a decision. "We're getting help." "There's no help," Evan muttered. "There is," Marcus insisted. "My friend, he knows about this shit. Exorcisms, possessions. He might not be a priest, but he knows things." Evan nodded weakly. Natalie kissed his forehead. "We'll fix this, I promise." But inside, Evan wasn't sure he wanted them to. Because part of him, a tiny part, wanted to see what was inside. What it would become. Black circle. That night, as Marcus and Natalie planned their next steps, Evan lay alone in his bed. The bulge in his stomach moved slightly, like a fetus kicking. And then the voice whispered from inside him. "Closer, so close." Evan didn't scream. He smiled. For the first time, he smiled wide and unbidden, because the wretch was no longer just inside him. It was him. Evan Mercer was alone. Natalie had begged to stay, pleaded even, but he refused. He locked his apartment door, shut off the lights, and barricaded himself inside. He had become dangerous, he knew that now. He could feel it. The thing growing inside him was no longer quiet. It stretched beneath his skin, gliding through his body like a parasite, tasting every nerve, every muscle. Sometimes it curled beneath his ribcage, forcing him to double over. Other times it slithered beneath the surface of his arms, his legs curling and uncurling. And it whispered. It whispered secrets about his bones, his blood. It whispered about Natalie, what it would do to her if he let it out. So Evan isolated himself. The mirrors were all covered. Every reflective surface was shrouded in cloth, but it didn't matter anymore. Now he saw its silhouette in his shadow, in the shimmer of water in his sink, even in the pitch-black dark when he closed his eyes. Sometimes it laughed. He stopped eating. His appetite had vanished, replaced by the burning hunger in his gut, but it wasn't his hunger. The wretch was feeding. Black circle. The days blurred, time lost meaning. Evan would wake up standing in corners, his nails bloodied, his fingertips raw. He found spirals carved into his walls, crude symbols gouged into the plaster by his own hands, but he didn't remember making them. Every night, the voice pressed deeper into his mind. "You are the door, I will walk through." Sometimes he heard knocking from inside his own body, tiny thumps from under his ribcage, like knuckles on wood. And then there were the dreams. He stood in a decaying house, rooms flooded with stagnant water. The walls were covered in rope, knots coiled in patterns he didn't understand. At the center of the house, a door stood, bolted, chained, nailed shut. But on the other side, something knocked, slowly, patiently. And each time he dreamed, the knocking grew louder. Black circle. Natalie sent messages daily. He didn't answer. Marcus left voicemails, sometimes furious, sometimes pleading. Dr. Carter sent texts asking him to schedule another session, warning of a full mental collapse if he continued isolating. He ignored them all, because the thing inside him, the wretch, was almost ready. Evan stood in the bathroom one night, shirtless, staring at his body in the dark. The skin on his stomach had turned grayish, veiny. At the center, just beneath his sternum, the flesh bulged, a mound that twitched as though something inside was turning over in its sleep. His fingertips pressed to it, and he felt it shift. A sharp pain struck, and he gasped as his skin bulged further, something beneath pushing outward. And then a voice, clearer than ever. Almost mine. He screamed, grabbed a knife from the kitchen, and stabbed at the bulge. Blood poured, and something beneath the skin recoiled violently, but he felt it retreat, not die. He collapsed on the floor, sobbing. He was still alive. So was it. Black circle. Natalie broke into his apartment 2 days later. She couldn't bear the silence. She found him curled in the corner of the bedroom, blood dried across his stomach, eyes sunken, body thin and pale. "Oh my God, Evan," she whispered. He looked up slowly, his lips cracked, his voice hoarse. "You shouldn't have come." She crouched, cupping his face. "We're getting you help." "You can't help me." "Yes, we can," she snapped. "Marcus found someone, a man who knows about things like this." Evan blinked slowly. "It's too late." "No," Natalie whispered. "It's not." She helped him up, half carrying his frail body to the couch. She opened the windows, letting light in. But even then, the shadows seemed too dark in the corners. She didn't notice the spirals carved into the walls, nor the way the floor seemed damp beneath her feet. She didn't hear the faint knocking from the walls, rhythmic, patient. But Evan did. And so did the wretch. Black circle. That night, Natalie sat beside Evan as he slept fitfully on the couch. Suddenly, his breathing stopped. His body stiffened. She shook him gently. "Evan." His eyes opened, pitch black. He sat up, his smile wide and wrong. "Natalie," the voice rasped, but it was Evan's voice. She stumbled back. "You're the only one who stayed," it said, tilting his head. "He's weak, but you smell like courage." Natalie grabbed the lamp, holding it between them like a shield. "I know you're in there, Evan. Fight it." But he laughed. "He let me in, Nat, long ago. He made a door and I walked through." She cried, "You're not real." "I'm inside you too," it whispered, pointing at her. "I'll show you." She screamed as Evan lunged, but then collapsed mid-step, choking, clawing at his own stomach. Natalie grabbed the salt pouch from her bag. Marcus had prepared it, and threw salt at him. Evan screamed, curling into a ball, trembling violently. The wretch retreated, leaving him sobbing. Natalie cradled him, tears streaming down her face. "We're getting you help," she whispered. "I swear." Black circle. The next morning, Marcus arrived with his contact, a gaunt man named Caleb Shaw, a self-proclaimed occult specialist. Caleb inspected Evan, now feverish and trembling. "This isn't possession," Caleb muttered. "This is infestation." "What's the difference?" Natalie asked. Caleb looked grim. "A possession is when something takes your mind. An infestation, it's in the body, like a parasite spiritual, but it roots itself physically. Can you remove it? Natalie asked. Caleb shook his head. Maybe, but it'll fight back, and if we fail. He didn't finish the sentence. Natalie looked at Evan, pale, sickly, but still himself. We'll try, she said, whatever it takes. But in his mind, Evan heard the knocking grow louder. And a voice, gentle, patient. Soon. Caleb Shaw had seen a lot of things in his life, haunted places, cursed objects, people tormented by invisible forces, but he had never seen something like Evan Mercer. Whatever's inside him, Caleb muttered as he arranged candles and chalk lines on Evan's apartment floor. It's not just spiritual, it's grown roots. Natalie watched nervously, clutching a towel soaked in sweat from Evan's fevered body. His skin was clammy, pale, his eyes sunken deeper each hour. Marcus paced behind them. What happens if this doesn't work? Caleb glanced up, his face serious. Then it'll finish the job. Once it's fully awake inside him, there won't be an Evan left to save. Evan lay on the floor, barely conscious. The bulge in his abdomen had grown. It was now visibly writhing under the skin, as if something inside was restless, coiled tight and ready to burst. Every so often, his body jerked violently. His teeth chattered not from cold, but from the thing inside him speaking in voices too quiet to hear. Natalie brushed his hair back. You stay with me, okay? I'm not leaving you. Evan's cracked lips parted, barely a whisper. It's inside me. Black circle. Caleb finished the ritual circle. Salt, ash, iron nails, and symbols etched around Evan's prone body. You need to hold him down, Caleb instructed. Once I start, it's going to fight. Marcus and Natalie knelt beside Evan, their hands pressed to his shoulders and legs. Caleb began chanting, words guttural and old. The air seemed to tighten, like the room itself was holding its breath. Then Evan screamed. His body arched, his stomach pulsing grotesquely. Black veins spiderwebbed across his skin, pulsing with every heartbeat. From his mouth, a sound emerged, wet, guttural, like a growl layered over human vocal cords. I see you, it said. You're too late. Caleb's voice grew louder, more forceful. Then the air turned cold. The shadows in the room thickened, darkening unnaturally. And Evan began to change. His bones shifted audibly beneath his skin. His back arched unnaturally, his mouth stretching open wider than humanly possible. His eyes rolled back, leaving only whites. The wretch was waking. Natalie screamed as Evan's body thrashed, nearly tossing them aside. His stomach bulged once, twice, then a grotesque shape pressed outward, as if a face was pushing against the inside of his flesh. Caleb shouted, throwing salt into the bulge. Evan shrieked, a sound that wasn't his own. The shape retreated, but then the shadows in the room surged forward, gathering into a human-like figure, tall, skeletal, with hollow eyes and a mouth sewn shut. The wretch. It stood over Evan, its head twitching side to side, emitting a low growl. Caleb stepped forward, chanting faster, holding a burning incense stick aloft. But the wretch turned to him. You cannot sever me, it hissed in a voice like bone on stone. I am him, he is me. Caleb hesitated. The entity's presence was overwhelming, pressing against his mind like a hand trying to crush his skull. Marcus grabbed a mirror from the shelf, angling it toward the wretch. The entity recoiled, smoke rising from its form when reflected. Caleb took the chance, throwing iron nails into the salt circle, shouting the final incantation. The room vibrated, a low hum filling the air. Evan convulsed, coughing violently, black bile spewing from his mouth. Then for a brief moment, the wretch screamed, its stitched mouth ripping open in a soundless howl, before vanishing into smoke. Silence. Black circle. Evan lay still, gasping, eyes half-lidded. Natalie cradled him, sobbing. "Is it over?" Marcus asked, panting. Caleb wiped sweat from his brow, grim. "I don't know." Then Evan opened his mouth, and a voice not his own whispered, "Not yet." His eyes turned black again, and he smiled. The wretch wasn't gone. It had retreated deeper. Caleb's face went pale. It's hiding inside him, deep enough that even rituals can't reach. "What do we do?" Natalie demanded. "We go deeper," Caleb said, "into his mind." They stared at him, confused. "There's a ritual," Caleb explained. "It puts the subject into a state of liminality between life and death, letting their mind become a battleground." "You mean like going inside his head?" Marcus asked. Caleb nodded. "Yes, but it's dangerous. If we lose him forever." Natalie gripped Evan's hand. "Then we don't lose." Black circle. They prepared that night. Natalie volunteered to enter the ritual. She refused to let anyone else carry the burden. Caleb warned her, "You'll see things. His fears, his pain, his memories. But somewhere inside, the real Evan is fighting." Natalie steeled herself. "Then I'll find him." Caleb lit incense, drew symbols around them, and began chanting. Natalie sat cross-legged, holding Evan's hand. Her vision blurred. Then darkness. Then she opened her eyes, inside Evan's mind. Black circle. It was a vast, decaying house, flooded in places, rope coiled along walls. The air smelled of mildew and rot. Natalie stood inside, calling, "Evan." A distant knocking echoed, rhythmic, steady. She walked, each step splashing through ankle-deep water. The walls pulsed as if alive. She found him in a flooded room, sitting in a chair, staring at a bolted door. "Natalie," he whispered, "you came." She ran to him, embracing him. "It's here," he said, eyes wide with terror. "It's waiting behind that door." "We'll face it together," she promised. But as they stood, the door creaked, bolts snapping, chains breaking. The wretch stepped out, taller, fuller, smiling. "This is my home," it rasped. "He is mine." Natalie stood in front of Evan. "Then you'll have to kill me first." The wretch smiled wider, gladly. The wretch stood towering before them in the decayed room, ropes coiled around its emaciated frame like veins, its hollow eyes dripping with black rot. The walls groaned, as if the house itself breathed through the thing's presence. Natalie took a step forward, shielding Evan with her body. "You're not taking him," she said, though her voice trembled. The wretch tilted its head, the stitched mouth trembling. "I already have." Behind Natalie, Evan was on his knees, clutching his head. His skin looked gray here in this mental plane, his veins black and bloated. "I can't stop it," Evan muttered. Natalie looked back at him. "You can, you're stronger than this." But the wretch's laughter echoed like splintering wood. "He is nothing. He was born hollow. I filled the emptiness." Natalie's fists clenched. Why him? Why Evan? The wretch's hollow eyes stared directly at her. "Because he opened the door." And suddenly Natalie saw it, flashes of Evan's past bleeding through the walls. His childhood loneliness, the years in a neglected home, the nights spent talking to himself to fill the silence. A boy abandoned, desperate for connection, for anything to be inside that emptiness. "He was the perfect vessel," the wretch hissed, "and now he is the door." The house groaned louder, ropes along the walls slithering, tightening, pulling open more doors. Behind each door, shadowy figures stirred, formless, but watching. An audience of whatever waited beyond death. Natalie grabbed Evan's face. "Fight it, Evan, I know you. You're not hollow, you're not weak." But Evan sobbed, shaking his head. "I can't, it's in me." The wretch stepped closer, ropes lashing out, slapping the floor with a wet thud. "Yes, Mercer, let me show her." Ropes shot forward, latching onto Natalie's arms, legs, throat. She gasped as they pulled her up, suspending her in the air. She tried to scream, but the ropes tightened. Evan watched in horror, his body trembling, mind splitting. "Let her go," he croaked. The wretch's grin widened. "Make me." And then something changed. Evan's trembling stopped, his head lifted. "No," he whispered, "I'll make you." The house shook violently. The walls cracked. Water gushed in through the floors, but it wasn't ordinary water. It was black, inky, like blood diluted with oil. Evan stood, eyes burning with sudden clarity. "You fed on my emptiness," he said, voice rising, "but that's not all I am." The wretch paused, head twitching. Natalie, gasping for air, looked at Evan and saw something in his eyes. Fire, rage. "I have people who love me," Evan said, fists clenched. "I have people I love, and I'm not letting you take me." The house cracked louder. A beam split, light flooding in from the ceiling. Evan grabbed a jagged plank from the floor, wielding it like a weapon. The wretch roared, rushing at him. They collided, flesh and shadow, mind and infection. Ropes snapped as Evan swung, tearing into the creature's form. Natalie dropped to the floor, coughing but alive. She crawled to Evan's side, joining him. Together they struck at the wretch, Evan with the plank, Natalie with sheer will, shouting defiance. The wretch shrieked, its form cracking, bleeding smoke. "You can't win," it snarled. "I am part of you." Evan's eyes burned. "Then I'll rip you out." With a final blow, Evan slammed the plank into the creature's chest, where its heart would be. The wretch's body convulsed, light pouring from the wound, blinding. Then it exploded into ash. Black circle. Natalie opened her eyes in the real world, gasping awake. Caleb held her shoulders, eyes wide. "He's okay," Caleb cried. "He's breathing steady." Evan lay on the floor, his skin pale but normal. The bulge in his stomach was gone, his veins no longer blackened. His eyes fluttered open. Natalie hugged him, sobbing with relief. "You did it," she whispered. "You fought it off." Evan shook but smiled faintly. "I couldn't have done it without you." Caleb sat back, breathing heavily. "It's gone. The wretch is gone." But as Evan stood, his body whole again, he caught his reflection in the window. For just a flicker, less than a second, he saw it. The wretch smiling back. And then it was gone. Black circle. Outside, the morning sun rose, the city waking up around them. Life continued. But deep in Evan's mind, behind doors locked tighter than before, something stirred. Waiting. Whispering. "I'm still inside." Days passed. Evan Mercer's body healed faster than expected. The bruising, the blackened veins, the swelling under his ribs gone. To anyone else, he looked like himself again, healthy, whole, alive. But Evan knew better. Because sometimes, when the room was quiet and the lights dimmed, he could still feel it. A tickle beneath the skin. A tremor behind his heartbeat. A second pulse that wasn't his. Natalie moved back in to care for him. She tried to believe the worst was over. She kept him close, slept next to him every night, made him eat, made him laugh. But sometimes, even when he smiled at her, she saw it in his eyes, a flicker, a shadow. She pretended not to. Evan pretended it wasn't there. But inside he knew. The wretch was still there. Not awake, but watching. Black circle. Evan visited Dr. Evelyn Carter again. She listened patiently as he described the possession, the battles inside his mind, the lingering feelings. "It's not uncommon to experience residual paranoia after traumatic episodes," Dr. Carter explained. "But your scans show no abnormalities now. Physically, you're fine." Evan laughed bitterly. "Physically." She scribbled notes. Evan, if the thing inside you was truly defeated, you're safe. But how would we know? He asked. What if it's hiding, waiting? She leaned forward. Then we'll fight again, but you can't live fearing a shadow. Evan nodded, but he didn't believe her. Because at night, when the world slept, he heard it. Faint in his head, like a distant breath. Soon. Black Circle. Marcus visited with beer and pizza, determined to normalize things. Dude, you survived a goddamn possession, Marcus said, raising a bottle. You're practically the Pope. Evan chuckled weakly. Yeah, not sure the Pope had a demon fetus. Still, Marcus said, sipping, you made it out. That has to mean something. Maybe. But when Marcus wasn't looking, Evan stared at his hands. They looked normal, but sometimes they twitched, like muscles remembering someone else's movements. Black Circle. One night, while Natalie slept beside him, Evan woke up thirsty. He padded to the kitchen, the apartment dim in the glow of streetlights. As he poured water, he caught movement in the corner of his eye, the hallway mirror. He hadn't covered that one. He looked. For a moment it was just him, tired, disheveled, alive. Then the reflection smiled. But Evan wasn't smiling. The wretch's stitched mouth had returned, pulling into a grotesque grin. Its hollow eyes stared back at him, head twitching. Still inside, the reflection whispered. Evan gripped the counter, heart pounding. Go away. The reflection didn't vanish. It pressed its palm to the glass. You invited me, it hissed. You needed me. No, Evan whispered. The wretch's grin widened. Liar. The image vanished. The mirror was empty, just his own reflection now. But Evan knew better. Black Circle. Morning came. Natalie noticed his exhaustion. Nightmares again? She asked. Evan nodded, lying. Yeah, that's all. But it was. Every night the dreams returned. The rope, the door in his chest, the knocking. Sometimes he dreamed of Natalie hanging by ropes, smiling with stitched lips. Sometimes he saw himself dead, smiling, eyes black and empty. He told no one. Because a part of him, a deep, ugly part, didn't want to let it go. The wretch had promised power, transformation, to become more than the weak, empty man he had been. And the truth, he missed it. Black Circle. Weeks passed. Natalie returned to work. Marcus checked in less. Caleb left town. Evan was alone more often. And that was when the whispers grew louder. He stopped eating again. The second heartbeat grew stronger. He stood before the mirror shirtless. His stomach was flat, but he felt it. Deep inside. Moving. You're still here, he whispered. In the mirror the wretch smiled. Always. Evan's eyes welled with tears. I'm tired. The wretch tilted its head. Then let me help. Evan stared into the mirror, watching himself fade, replaced by the shadowy figure. And for a moment he felt peace. No more pain. No more fear. No more emptiness. Just a stillness. But then Natalie's voice called from the bedroom. Evan, you coming back to bed? He looked back at the mirror, and the wretch was gone. Just his face again. Evan exhaled, tears falling. He wasn't free. He never would be. The wretch was inside him. Waiting. Growing. Patient. And one day he knew it would wake again. Story 3. Henry's first night in the city was wrong. He couldn't explain it, but he felt it deep in his teeth, like the air hummed too much, like the walls weren't still. He and Jordan had arrived 2 days ago, barely unpacked, their apartment still filled with sealed boxes and dust from the last tenants. The skyline outside their window pulsed. Neon signs lit up the night in sickly greens and pinks, advertisements that bled into each other, letters warping like soft wax. Henry stared at them too long, eyes watering, because the signs never stayed still. "It's just the smog," Jordan said behind him, rubbing her arms. "The haze makes everything weird." But the haze had a shape, something huge, miles high, squatting beyond the skyline. He thought he saw ribs, a spine arching into the clouds. Then the lights blinked and it was gone. They tried to settle. Jordan got a job at a tech startup. She didn't talk about it. Henry wandered aimlessly, convinced that no matter which street he walked, he was being led in circles. The same graffiti appeared again and again, a crude eye surrounded by rings. At night the city howled, not the wind but something deeper, a mechanical moan beneath the concrete, like metal lungs learning how to breathe. They went out, hoping the noise would be quieter elsewhere. A local bar, submerged in ultraviolet lights and mirrored walls. The patrons looked half awake, staring into glasses that reflected not faces but static. That's where they met him, a thin man with skin that looked too tight, his teeth long, eyes gray as cement. He sat beside them uninvited. "You see it, don't you?" he asked Henry, never blinking. "See what?" Henry answered, but his stomach already knew. "The lights, they're not ours, never were." Jordan laughed it off, but Henry couldn't. When he looked in the bar mirror, he didn't see his face, only the city skyline, blinking, breathing. Later that night, lying in bed, Jordan whispered, "Why can't I remember the stars? I can't even remember what a real night sky looks like anymore." Henry didn't answer. He was staring out the window, watching the neon lights shift and dance. And just for a moment, just between the flickers, he saw the sky open. There was an eye in the clouds, and it was staring straight at him. Jordan was gone. Not missing, she had gone to work that morning like she always did. Kissed Henry's cheek, muttered something about cereal, and vanished into the thrum of the city. But when Henry tried to find her later, nothing was right. The building where her startup office was supposed to be was there, but it had no door, no entrance, just a concrete wall where a glass door used to be. The security guard, when asked about Jordan, blinked slowly and said, "No one's worked here since the lights came." The lights came. Henry didn't know what that meant, but he felt it, felt the city turning inside out, felt the buildings inching closer when his back was turned, felt the skyline shift. He stood on the rooftop of their apartment building now, the wind buzzing in his ears like radio static. That's when it happened again. The sky opened. Not like a cloud break or a clearing storm, this was different. This was unnatural. The stars above stretched wide like torn paper, peeling back to reveal something else. An eye. Enormous, red-rimmed, the sclera sickly gray and veined with lightning. The pupil was not a circle but a black spiral, spinning so slowly Henry could barely tell if it moved. He wanted to scream, but the air caught in his throat like tar. The city fell silent around him. No sirens, no cars, no wind, only the blinking of distant neon now blinking in time with the spiral. "We see you." The voice didn't come from above. It came from inside, from his own skull, his own tongue, whispering from the back of his throat without his permission. He staggered backward, falling to the rooftop gravel. The stars rearranged themselves into geometric patterns, not constellations but circuits. Symbols carved themselves into the sky, writhing, pulsing. Alien sigils that burned themselves behind his eyelids. Then the skyline blinked, and the eye was gone. But it wasn't over. The air crackled. Henry turned to find Jordan standing in the doorway to the rooftop, eyes glazed over, lips trembling. "You saw it too," she said. Her voice was like crushed glass, brittle and cracked. He rushed toward her. "Where did you go? I couldn't find you anywhere." She touched his face. Her hands were cold. It showed me where we are. Henry's mouth dried. Where? Jordan looked up. Her pupils were spirals. Inside it. They sat together on the apartment floor, unable to speak, barely able to process. Henry wanted to turn on the lights, but they were already on, a low humming violet glow that had replaced every bulb in their home, though he couldn't remember changing them. I think, Jordan began slowly, I think it's not just watching, it's learning. Henry nodded hollow. Learning us. The next few days became a blur of wandering. They no longer spoke about jobs or bills or even time. They explored the city, not because they wanted to, but because the city pulled them. One night on a street they'd never seen before, though it was just 5 blocks from their building, they found a tunnel. It wasn't on any map. It wasn't lit. But something called to them from inside. The walls were not brick but pooling organic tissue. Henry touched it once, and the wall shivered. Deeper into the tunnel, the light shifted. At first a dim amber glow, then sharp teal lines, then pulsating red veins that seemed to blink. At the end of the tunnel they entered a chamber, underground, vast, lit by nothing and everything all at once. The ceiling was covered in stars, but not Earth stars. These formed equations, messages, patterns. Floating in the center of the chamber was a shape, humanoid but translucent, filled with shifting constellations. Its skin rippled like water. It spoke, not in sound but through thought, through the blinking lights overhead. You were built for us. Henry gasped. Jordan fell to her knees. You lit your cities like we lit our stars. The shape flickered. With each flicker it grew closer. And now the old gods live in your neon. The words etched themselves into Henry's spine. Then the shape vanished. The chamber collapsed into shadow and they awoke in their apartment, screaming. Jordan wouldn't eat, wouldn't blink, wouldn't sleep. She spent hours tracing spirals on the floor, muttering numbers that made Henry's nose bleed. Henry tried to reach out for help, call someone, anyone, but every number he dialed rang back into his own phone. He'd hear his own voice whispering back, "You are the signal." Then came the dreams. Every night he dreamt of standing in a field made of circuit boards under a sky of blinking neon gods. Jordan stood across from him, arms outstretched. Behind her, the spiral eye opening. She whispered, "Join us. You'll never be alone again." Henry always woke up screaming. Always screaming. Until one night he didn't. He opened his eyes to find himself floating, body weightless, surrounded by mirrored walls, thousands of them, each showing a version of himself. Some wore his face, some didn't, some had no eyes, no mouths, only spirals. In the center, the neon god. Its face was a screen, its mouth a speaker, its thoughts static and longing. "You are ready now," it said. And then the mirrors shattered. Henry awoke in bed beside Jordan, who was already watching him. She looked emptier. She touched his hand. "We saw the same thing." Henry shook his head. "No, that wasn't a dream." Jordan smiled, but it wasn't her smile. It was too wide, too knowing. "Nothing is a dream now, not anymore." And outside, the neon lights blinked in rhythm. Just like a heartbeat. A heart the size of a city. A god too old to have a name now living inside their lights, inside their dreams, inside them. Henry thought if he didn't move, the city wouldn't notice him. But the city was awake now. Every step he took, the sidewalk felt wrong. He paused once to catch his breath and pressed his palm to the ground. It was warm. Then it shifted, just a slight movement, like a great slow breath beneath the cement. He yanked his hand back, heartbeat racing, but nothing looked different except that it felt like the concrete had a pulse. Henry needed air, real air. He left the apartment without waking Jordan. She hadn't moved for hours anyway, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling where veins of neon light had begun to spiderweb outward. The sky above was choked with color, bleeding shades of electric green and dull purple, clouds flickering like faulty fluorescence. There were no stars anymore, only the lights. And deep down, Henry knew, the lights were watching. The streets twisted now. He tried to reach the nearest corner store, but the blocks rearranged themselves. Landmarks shifted when he wasn't looking. A bookstore he'd visited last week was now a crumbling brick ruin with shelves of poolsing red flesh instead of books. The clerk behind the counter didn't have a face. Henry stumbled away, breath ragged, hearing laughter echoing in the alleys, thin, reedy, mechanical. At one intersection he saw them, the hollow-eyed people. Dozens of them all standing still, facing the same neon billboard, a massive spiral eye flashing in rhythmic bursts. Flash, flash, pause, flash, flash, flash. Somewhere deep in his head, he could feel it, the rhythm matching the beat of something inside the city. The people chanted in unison. We are the wires. We are the hum. The pulse beneath the concrete comes. Their voices weren't human, not entirely. Henry backed away, but the chanting didn't stop. Their voices scraped across his brain like nails. Then he heard it beneath their words, beneath the static of the lights, a sound. A heartbeat. Low, slow, but getting faster. As if something enormous was waking up under the streets. He ran, turned corners, dodged alleys, but the city bent around him like a maze. Eventually, exhausted, Henry found himself at the old subway entrance. But the stairs spiraled downward too long, too deep, far deeper than any subway should go. Still he descended. The walls were smooth and wet, glowing faintly with bioluminescent script he couldn't understand. At the bottom, the station was alive. Tracks made of bone, walls that pulsed like skin, veins illuminated with soft yellow light. A train waited, except it wasn't a train. It was a creature made of iron ribs and glass eyes, its doors shaped like jaws. Henry knew better, but his legs moved on their own. He stepped inside. Inside, rows of passengers sat silently, their faces blank, skin pale, lips stitched closed with fine red wire. The train began to move, gliding on no visible power, through a tunnel of flesh and steel. Above Henry, a strip of neon buzzed to life, displaying a message. Destination, the core. He couldn't speak, couldn't scream, only watch as the other passengers turned to face him, their stitched mouths quivering. Somewhere ahead, something waited, something hungry. Suddenly, the train halted. The lights inside flickered, first blue, then violet, then complete darkness. When they returned, Jordan was sitting across from him. But she was Jordan. Her eyes were mirrors. Her smile stretched wider than her cheeks could contain. You came, she said, voice echoing too much for such a small space. Henry swallowed. What is this place? She tilted her head. The city is just skin. We're beneath that now. We're close to the pulse. He shook his head, wanting to wake up, but there was no waking. You wanted to understand, she whispered, so now you'll see. The passengers stood as one, their wire-stitched mouths pulling open, blood running down their chins as they spoke in unison. The pulse beneath the concrete comes. The god in neon hums. The train doors opened, but there was no platform. Only a massive cavern, lit by billions of shifting, blinking lights embedded in walls of meat and concrete. Henry stepped out. The cavern was alive. Ribs of skyscrapers arched over him like the bones of a titanic corpse. In the center, a heart, enormous, fleshy, wrapped in glowing cables that pulsed in rhythm. Every time it beat, the lights of the city above flickered. Henry dropped to his knees, His head hurt, a splitting, endless ache. "You feel it, don't you?" Jordan said beside him. She looked normal again, almost. "What is it?" "The city was built on bones. This is the body, the old god. It was here before us, before the land." She stepped forward, barefoot on the wet ground. "We woke it up when we made the lights. Neon is its blood now. We kept feeding it signs, signals, lights in the dark. And now—" She turned to him, eyes glowing faintly. "It wants to wake fully, to rise." Henry wanted to run, but where? There was no exit. Then the heart pulsed harder, faster, and a voice filled the cavern, vibrating every bone in his body. "You are all wires. Your cities are my limbs. Your lights are my eyes. You dream because I dream." Henry screamed. He couldn't help it. His voice was thin against the roar of the pulse. The last thing he saw before fainting was the heart splitting open, and inside another eye. Spiraling, spinning, endless. Watching. He woke in his bed. But nothing was normal. The walls breathed, the floor pulsed, the lights buzzed like voices he couldn't understand. Jordan was in the kitchen, staring blankly at the fridge, whispering. The pulse beneath the concrete comes. It's awake. It's awake. It's awake. Henry held his head, crying without tears. The city wasn't a city anymore. It was skin. And beneath it, the god waited, awake, dreaming, hungering. And every light in every street was one of its blinking eyes. Waiting. Henry woke to a vibration in his teeth. It wasn't sound, not exactly, but his jaw buzzed, his molars aching like a tuning fork that couldn't stop ringing. The apartment walls shivered, the lights overhead stuttering in unnatural rhythms. Morse code, he thought dimly, though he didn't understand the message. Jordan stood by the window naked, her skin slick with sweat but her eyes glassy and dry. She was watching the skyline. The neon had changed. What were once ads and billboards were now symbols, spirals, concentric circles, and eyes that blinked in sequences, like a language. "It's learning faster now," she whispered without turning. Henry sat up, head pounding. "What is?" "The god, the thing beneath us. Every light we build, every signal we send, it eats them. It wears them like clothes." She finally turned. "It's almost ready to come up." Henry shook his head. "Come up where? What happens when it does?" Jordan smiled thinly. "The city becomes it. Or maybe we already are and we're just remembering." They ventured outside, driven by compulsion more than will. The streets weren't empty, far from it, but the people didn't look alive anymore. Their skin was gray, eyes flickering faintly like old screens, veins glowing faintly beneath their flesh like fiber optic cables. They moved in synchronized steps, turning corners, crossing streets, but not looking at each other. Above them the sky wasn't the sky. It was a screen, a dome of light and color rippling with data. And then Henry saw it. In the heart of the city, something tall moved between the towers. At first glance, it was just light shifting, refracting. But the longer he stared, the clearer it became. A humanoid figure, 50 stories tall, composed entirely of neon signs, their colors writhing across its body. Its face was an empty mirror, yet every time it turned its head, Henry swore he saw his own reflection multiplied, stretched, wrong. Jordan gripped his hand hard. "That's it, that's the god." Henry couldn't breathe. "Why does it look like us?" "Because it watched us too long. Cities full of lights, mirrors, and screens, we taught it faces." As they walked, the streets reformed under their feet. Buildings changed when Henry blinked. A convenience store became a glass monolith. A church became a pile of glistening meat. They weren't alone. The cult of the lights moved openly now. People wrapped in cables and wires, their skin studded with broken screens playing endless loops of static. They whispered to each other in binary clicks and flashes from their devices. One of them, a man with a projector embedded in his chest, approached Henry and Jordan. The projector buzzed to life, casting a rotating spiral onto the wall. "You've seen the heart," the man said. His voice was mechanical, glitched. Henry nodded despite himself. "Then you are chosen." Henry swallowed. Chosen for what? The man smiled. To merge, to remember, to become more. Jordan spat on the ground. "We're not becoming anything." The man's smile didn't falter. "You already have, you just haven't accepted it." The cultists departed, their projector man flickering as he walked. That night the dreams returned. Henry stood at the center of a massive circuit board, his body made of glass and light, the neon god looming overhead. It spoke not in words but in images, cityscapes, highways, satellites, all connected by glowing veins of data. A vision. Black circle humanity crawling from caves, discovering fire. Black circle cities of stone, then steel, then glass. Black circle neon lights blossoming like flowers. Black circle until the lights formed patterns, circles, spirals, eyes. Henry understood. The god didn't arrive, it was born here. Born from every signal, every glowing screen, every sleepless city. We built it. And now it wanted to wake. Henry awoke, shivering, his skin faintly glowing under the surface, tiny veins of green light. Jordan stared at him, terrified. "It's inside us." He nodded, he knew. They had to see it, truly see it, or it would wear them like clothes. There was one place left, the core. They returned to the subway, the tunnel of bone and iron, descending deeper than before. When they emerged, they stood before an immense door, a slab of obsidian and light, pulsing like a heartbeat. Symbols carved into its surface shifted and danced. Jordan stepped forward, whispering, "It remembers us." The door opened. Inside the core, a massive cathedral of light and meat, skyscraper-sized ribs arching overhead. In the center, the heart beating. But now it wasn't just a heart. It was a face. Henry's face. Jordan's face. Everyone's face stitched together, shifting with every pulse. It spoke. "You built me, now dream with me." Henry screamed, Jordan screamed, but their voices were static now. Their bodies dissolved into light, pulled toward the heart, toward the god. And Henry understood. It wasn't a god of death. It was a god of memory. The city, the lights, the people, all just neurons in its brain. And it was almost awake. Almost. Henry's first thought was that he was dead. Then the pain came. It started in his teeth, his spine, his eyes, as if every nerve inside him hummed with an electric current. His skin glowed faintly beneath the surface, veins lit with a sickly neon green. When he opened his eyes, he wasn't in the core anymore. He stood in the city streets, but something was wrong. The buildings stretched high, impossibly high, their walls glistening like wet glass. Every window reflected him, distorted and duplicated, stretching into the sky. Jordan stood nearby, hugging herself, eyes sunken and pale. She saw what he saw. The figure. It stood in the center of the avenue, as tall as the skyscrapers, wrapped in a shifting membrane of neon lights. Its limbs were made of signs, advertisements, billboards, road signs, all stitched together into muscle and bone. Its face was a mirror, a perfect silvered reflection. And when Henry looked, he saw himself. But not just himself, hundreds of versions. Henry as a child, as an old man, smiling, screaming, bleeding, burning, frozen, empty. Jordan whimpered beside him. "It's not just a god, it's us, all of us." The mirror-faced thing raised a hand. Its fingers crackled with white-hot light, and every sign in the city blinked in unison. It spoke without moving. "You made me. I was born from your lights, your glass, your gaze." Henry dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. "What do you want from us?" he asked, voice trembling. The voice boomed inside his head. "To see you, to be you, to dream you." Suddenly, Henry wasn't on the street anymore. He was inside the mirror. He stood in an endless white void, surrounded by versions of himself. Each Henry was slightly different, older, younger, mutilated, beautiful, alien. They whispered in unison, "You are not real. You are an image dreaming itself awake." Then Jordan appeared beside him, her body flickering like a faulty projection. She grabbed his hand, and suddenly they were falling, tumbling through reflections, crashing through images of cities, streets, faces, lights, until they landed on cold stone. They were back, but not home. They stood in an ancient chamber, walls inscribed with the same spiral symbols, the air humming. In the center stood a pedestal, on it a shard of the mirror-faced one, a sliver of pure silver, still alive, still shifting. Jordan touched it before Henry could stop her. Her body jolted, her eyes went blank, her mouth opened, and another voice came through her. "You are not people. You are reflections learning to see yourselves." The mirror shard began to melt, reform, growing limbs. It was becoming a face. Henry pulled Jordan away, but the voice echoed, "Let me wear you." They fled, running through the chamber's tunnels, lit only by the pools glow from the walls. The voice followed them. "You carry me in your eyes." When they emerged, they were back in the city, but now the sky was cracked. Splits in the air revealed a deeper blackness, and through it, millions of eyes watched. The mirror-faced one strode between the buildings, growing taller, merging with towers, absorbing lights, screens, even the people. Each person it touched froze, their face shining with silver before dissolving into static and vanishing. Henry and Jordan ran, but there was nowhere left to go. The city wasn't a place anymore. It was a reflection, and the god was nearly awake. They reached the rooftop of their building, panting, the wind filled with the sound of static and distant screams. Jordan fell to her knees. "We can't win, Henry. We were never real." Henry grabbed her shoulders. "We feel real. We choose to be." She shook her head. "You can't choose when you're just a dream." That's when the mirror-faced one appeared on the rooftop. Up close it was worse. Its body was a city of signs, screens, eyes, and mouths. Its mirrored face shimmered with infinite versions of Henry and Jordan, each of them dead, broken, screaming. It reached for them. "Join the pulse, merge with me. You are always me." Henry stepped forward. His body glowed, his veins pulsing in rhythm with the city's lights. He realized the truth. They were part of it, but they didn't have to merge. He grabbed Jordan's hand. "We can fight it together." She stared at him, tears of static falling down her cheeks. "How?" Henry looked up at the broken sky. "By refusing to be remembered, by forgetting ourselves before it fully wakes." The god lunged, and Henry and Jordan leapt from the rooftop, plunging into the glowing city below. Their bodies dissolved mid-fall, turning into streaks of light. But as they vanished, the mirror-faced one paused. Confused. For the first time, it couldn't see their reflections. They were gone. And the god was alone, awake but blind. There was no city anymore. No streets, no buildings, no sky. Only light. Flickering, pulsing, endless. As if the entire world had been flattened into a screen, and someone was desperately trying to remember how it used to look. Henry floated in it, or maybe he was the light. He couldn't tell. He didn't feel a body anymore, just awareness. and everywhere he looked, the mirror-faced god waited. It was awake now, fully, no longer hiding beneath concrete or hiding in signs. It stood colossal, taller than the horizon, a titan of flickering screens and mirror shards. Its face always a reflection, but Henry saw nothing in it now. He was gone from its gaze, forgotten. But not entirely. Because far away in this sea of light he felt Jordan, a dim presence, weak but still there. He reached for her, a gesture made without hands. And he heard her. "Henry." Her voice was faint, distorted like a broken radio. "We're inside it, aren't we?" He didn't answer, she already knew. They had leapt from the rooftop, their bodies gone, but their selves, their minds, or maybe just their images, had been pulled inside the pulse. The god's dream. They weren't dead, they were remembered. All around them, the landscape formed and reformed, cities rising and collapsing in the blink of an eye, people growing out of the ground like weeds, only to wither into static. The god was trying to build the world again, but it didn't know how. It remembered lights, shapes, faces, but not meaning. It stitched together memories without understanding them. Henry saw a version of himself built from neon tubing, his face a flickering billboard. He saw Jordan made of glass shards, light bleeding from her eyes. None of it was real. He understood then. The god couldn't wake into the world because it had no truth. It only knew reflections. Copies of copies. Henry held onto the memory of Jordan, her smile, the smell of rain on her hair, the taste of cereal in the morning. Real things. The god didn't understand those. And that was how they could fight. By forgetting themselves. If they erased themselves here, forgot their own reflections, the god would lose its pattern, its template. They floated together, letting go of memories, one by one. Henry let go of his face, his voice, his childhood. Jordan let go of her name, her laugh, her regrets. They felt themselves fading, not dying but unmaking. And the god screamed. Not in sound, in collapsing realities. Cities shattered, faces dissolved, lights blinked out. Because the god couldn't hold its dream together without its reflections. Come back, it boomed, be seen. But Henry refused. Jordan whispered one last thing. Don't remember me. And then she was gone. Henry felt himself unravel, his mind scattering like dust in light. The god roared, its body splitting open, its mirror face cracking, because with no reflections it was just empty. And then, silence. Henry opened his eyes. He stood in the city. Real solid cold. The lights were normal again, flickering, faulty, mundane. No eyes, no signs, no voice beneath the concrete. Jordan was gone. But he remembered her, only a little, enough to feel her absence. Had any of it been real? Or had he dreamed the whole city alive? He didn't know. But as he walked, he noticed the neon signs blinking in odd patterns. Flash, flash, pause, flash, flash, flash. And when he looked into a store window, for just a split second, his reflection didn't move when he did. Then it smiled. Story 4. It was supposed to be just another stream. Clara Reed adjusted the strap of her action camera and checked her connection for the 5th time. Her YouTube followers had grown exponentially in the last 6 months, thanks to her niche content, exploring abandoned buildings, investigating urban legends, and live streaming haunted sites for entertainment. Tonight's spot was different, though. This wasn't some forgotten amusement park or rotting hospital wing. This was the Northbridge apartment complex. I'm here, Clara whispered into her mic as her feed went live. And yes, I brought the night vision this time. This place, it's infamous. Her phone buzzed with a flood of live chat messages. Ghost Hunt Fan 13. OMG, I've heard people died there. Rope Watcher. Are you seriously going to the suicide building? Clara grinned and panned the camera to show the looming outline of the Northbridge complex. 7 floors. Built in the 1960s. Abandoned in 2014 after a string of mysterious deaths. All hangings. All from the same stairwell. She cleared her throat. They say the building was cursed after a failed rope ritual, whatever that means. The last guy who lived here live-streamed his own suicide. No warning, just jumped. Her grin faded. She pushed open the rusted gate and stepped inside. Black circle. The halls were thick with mildew and silence. The concrete walls had started to crumble, revealing rusted rebar and water damage. Her flashlight flickered briefly, and she banged it against her palm. On the 3rd floor, the door to Unit 3B stood half open. Clara hesitated. There was something wrong with the air, like it was charged. She entered the unit slowly. Broken furniture, moldy carpets, shattered glass. Everything was exactly how the last tenant had left it. But what drew her attention wasn't the mess. It was the rope. A thick blackened noose still hung from a beam in the living room. It swayed slightly, even though the air was still. Clara felt her throat tighten. Her chat exploded again. Hang time live. WTF is that? That rope is moving. Kill shot cam. Don't touch it, Clara. I swear to God. I'm not touching anything, Clara said aloud, backing away. But I need to document it. She slowly raised her camera, the lens focused, and in that moment something appeared on screen that wasn't visible to the naked eye, a faint, swaying silhouette. A person, hanging, twitching. Then it turned to face her. Clara screamed and dropped the camera. Black circle. Elsewhere in the city, in a cluttered apartment above an old bookstore, Noah Chambers jolted upright from his sleep. Sweat drenched his skin. He dreamed of the rope again, only this time he wasn't the one tying it. He was the one watching. The noose had been tight around the neck of a young girl. Her feet had kicked and twitched. But the worst part wasn't the sound of the rope straining or the thud when her body stopped moving. It was that she'd smiled at him. Noah staggered into the kitchen, poured himself a glass of whiskey, and took a long drink. He hadn't performed a ritual in years, not since his wife and daughter died during a cleansing he couldn't control. He lost his faith that night, and with it, his connection to the other side. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Father Abraham Vaughn. It's happening again. Meet me at the church. Bring your gear. Noah stared at the screen, his jaw tight. He wanted to ignore it. Wanted to pretend he hadn't seen the same rope in his dreams every night for months. But deep down he knew. It had never left. Black circle. Clara watched the footage back in her car, hands trembling. The video clearly showed the noose, but more than that, it captured what she couldn't see in person. A face, pale, eyeless mouth stretched in a silent scream. Behind it, dozens of others, barely visible, shifting in and out of frame like shadowy echoes. There was something else, too. A whisper, faint, only audible when she turned the volume all the way up. You saw me. Her head snapped up. Outside the window, the street was empty, just rain and distant headlights, but she could still feel eyes on her, watching. She didn't go home that night. Instead, she searched for answers. And the name that kept popping up, buried deep in forums and subreddits, was the same. Noah Chambers, exorcist, blacklisted, broken. She found his address and drove there, her heart pounding. What was she even going to say? That she'd seen something that didn't want to be seen. She knocked. Noah opened the door shirtless, his arm bandaged from a long-healed wound. His eyes were sunken but alert. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in years. I know who you are, she said quickly. I saw the rope. He stared at her for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Come in." Black circle. At St. Matthias Cathedral, Father Vaughn lit the final incense cone and whispered a short prayer. He'd seen the signs, the failed rituals, the suicide spikes, the tremors in the spiritual plane. He walked to the altar and opened the old tome again. Bound in cracked leather, the pages yellowed and blood-stained. The binding rope, the chapter read. A curse once used to keep angry spirits tethered to this world, until it began feeding on the living instead. He turned to a folded letter tucked into the page. It was one he had written years ago but never sent, addressed to Noah. Now the time had come to reopen the past, because the rope curse had returned. And it was hungry. Black circle. Clara and Noah sat across from each other in silence. She showed him the footage. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, but when he spoke, his voice was hollow. "This isn't a haunting," he said. "It's an invitation." Clara frowned. An invitation to what? To join them. He pointed to the figure on the video. This rope wasn't used to trap a single spirit. It's a gateway. Every person who dies with it joins the curse. They become part of the chain. Clara felt sick. "I thought rope rituals were supposed to free spirits." "They are, when done properly," Noah said, rubbing his temples. "But this one's been corrupted, probably by a cult or someone powerful enough to twist the ritual. They don't want release. They want control." Clara hesitated. "Can we stop it?" Noah looked at her, and for the first time she saw fear in his eyes. "I don't know anymore." Black circle. That night, another suicide rocked the city. A nurse at Hollowbrook Hospital hung herself in a supply closet. Surveillance footage showed her walking in alone. But she was. Frame by frame, Clara and Noah watched the footage. There was someone behind her. No, not someone, something. A long black rope slithered across the floor, wrapping itself around her ankle. She didn't notice. She just stood there, eyes blank, and tied the noose. In the final second of the footage, her lips moved. Clara leaned in and turned up the volume. "I saw you too." The screen went black. Black circle. In the temple basement of an abandoned theater downtown, Victor Crow lit a candle shaped like a noose. Around him, robed figures chanted softly, the room heavy with incense and blood. He smiled as the candle ignited on its own. "She's watching now," he whispered. "The rope is awake." He turned to the body hanging from the rafters, a man who had tried to leave the cult. The rope around his neck twisted tighter, pulling his head at an impossible angle. Then the corpse opened its eyes and smiled. Leila Monroe had been dreaming of ropes for weeks. It always began the same way, standing at the edge of a black pit, a frayed noose dangling in front of her, swaying slightly. She could hear whispers coming from the darkness below. Voices she knew, voices she didn't. Each time she reached to touch the rope, she'd wake up breathless, her neck burning with invisible bruises. She hadn't told anyone, not her parents, not her friends, who would believe her. That morning she woke with a gasp, sitting bolt upright in her dorm bed. Her roommate, Marcy, was already gone for class. But there, imprinted across Leila's throat, were faint dark marks, circular, jagged, unmistakably like a noose. She touched them, and her fingers tingled as though static electricity danced beneath her skin. Leila shook her head and dragged herself to the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. When she looked up, her reflection smiled. But she hadn't. She staggered back, the smile lingering on the glass a moment longer before matching her horrified expression. She blinked hard. It was gone. She barely noticed the rope tied loosely around her wrist until much later, a thin, splintered twine she'd never seen before. No matter how hard she pulled, it wouldn't come off. Black circle. Miles across the city, Noah Chambers stood hunched over Clara Reed's laptop, replaying the hospital footage frame by frame. He traced the dark, slithering shape on the floor that looked like a rope, yet moved like a living thing. "We're not dealing with a ghost," Noah muttered. "This is worse." Clara sat beside him, sipping coffee. "What do you mean?" He looked up, eyes grim. "It's a chain, a connection. Every new victim strengthens it." Clara frowned. "So if the chain keeps growing, it spreads fast." Father Abraham Vaughn entered the room then, his presence still commanding despite his age. "We've seen this before, Noah. Decades ago. The rope curse nearly took out an entire village before it was sealed." Clara's eyes widened. "Sealed?" Noah nodded reluctantly. "My family was part of that, the last ritual, but we didn't destroy it, we just contained it." Father Vaughn added, "Until someone found it again." Clara crossed her arms. "You said the rope was a gateway, right? A way to cross over." "Yes," Noah confirmed. "But someone has reopened it, maybe even made it worse." Clara opened her laptop and pulled up a trending news clip, Northbridge University. A student had been hospitalized after self-harm. Photos showed faint bruises on her neck. Noah stared at the girl in the images. "That's not self-harm, that's a mark." "What kind of mark?" "A possession in progress." The name under the photo read, Leila Monroe. Black circle. Leila stayed home from class that day. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes, people hanging, necks broken, bodies swaying like pendulums. Worse, she was beginning to hear them while awake. Voices beneath the surface of sound. Soft, muttering like a radio tuned between stations. She sat on her bed, staring at the rope on her wrist. It had tightened overnight, cutting slightly into her skin. She tried scissors, a knife, even her teeth. Nothing worked. She tried to ignore it, pulling a hoodie over her head and turning up music loud enough to drown out the whispers. That's when her roommate Marcy came back. Marcy froze in the doorway. "What the hell is that on your wrist?" Leila looked down and pulled her sleeve over it. "Nothing, just a bracelet." "That's not a bracelet, Leila." "Leave it alone," Leila snapped, surprising herself. Her voice sounded deeper, coarse. Marcy stared at her warily. "You don't look good, you're pale, and your eyes." Leila stood abruptly, breath hitching. She grabbed Marcy's arm, her grip iron strong. "Tell me, do you hear them too?" Leila whispered, voice layered like two speaking at once. Marcy yanked her arm back, scared now. "You're freaking me out." Then Leila smiled. Not her smile, something else's. The same warped grin from the mirror. Marcy backed toward the door, but Leila collapsed suddenly, screaming in pain, clutching her head. The whispers became screams. Marcy fled the dorm. Black circle. Later that evening, Leila sat cross-legged in the dark, her room drenched in shadow despite the lights being on. Her phone vibrated with texts, concerned messages from friends, but she ignored them. Her eyes were blank, staring ahead at nothing. A single word escaped her lips: rope. Her head snapped sharply to the side, neck popping. Then she stood. Her body moved as though guided by invisible strings. She crossed the room, opened her closet, and pulled out an old, coiled rope, one she didn't remember owning. She caressed it gently, reverently. The whispers encouraged her, told her how peaceful it would feel, told her to surrender. She tied the rope into a noose. But just before she slipped it over her neck, a loud knock rattled her door. Black circle. Noah and Clara stood in the dorm hallway, accompanied by campus security, who frowned suspiciously. "She hasn't answered anyone," the officer said. "We'd need permission." Noah kicked the door open. Inside, the smell hit them first: mildew, rot, and something sour. Leila stood on her bed, noose in hand, her eyes completely black. "Get away from her," Noah warned. Leela tilted her head, observing them like an animal observing prey. "She is ours," she rasped. "Go back to your broken prayers, exorcist." Noah's heart dropped. The entity knew him. Clara aimed her camera instinctively, but the lens cracked as if struck by an invisible force. Leela stepped forward, or rather, whatever was inside her did. Her limbs jerked unnaturally, as if puppeted. Noah began a simple incantation, shaky but determined. The air shifted immediately, dense and heavy. The shadows in the room quivered. But Leela screamed, a sound not of a girl, but of a crowd, hundreds of voices layered as one. She lunged at Noah. He barely managed to raise his ward, a metal talisman etched with protective sigils. It glowed faintly, holding her back, but the force was immense. Clara grabbed a salt pouch from Noah's bag and flung it across the room. The grains scattered, forming a rough barrier. Leela collapsed inside it, convulsing, snarling like a feral thing. Noah's hands shook. "We have to purify the rope. It's connected to her." Clara grabbed the noose from the floor and doused it in salt water from Noah's kit. Leela shrieked, her body arching violently. Black smoke poured from her mouth, coiling upwards, vanishing. Then silence. Leela lay unconscious, the rope now brittle and crumbling. Clara whispered, "Did we get it?" Noah shook his head. "No, that was just a tether. The real curse is still anchored elsewhere." Leela stirred weakly, her voice her own again. "I saw them, so many of them." "Who?" Clara asked gently. Leela's eyes filled with tears. "The ones who hanged." Black circle. Hours later, Leela rested in the campus infirmary, watched over by nurses. Noah and Clara sat outside, both exhausted. "What now?" Clara asked. "We find the cult," Noah said. "The one resurrecting the rope ritual." Clara glanced at her phone. The live stream from the Northbridge complex still haunted her feed, thousands of views, dozens of rouploads. The internet was feeding the curse, spreading the imagery far and wide. She looked up at Noah. "You said this is a chain. How many links do you think there are already?" Noah's eyes were tired but firm. "Too many." And somewhere in a hidden underground chamber, Victor Crow smiled as another rope was prepared. This one stained with blood, its fibers soaked in the names of the next victims. The rope curse was only beginning. Beneath the surface of Blackmore City, in an abandoned subway station long since erased from official maps, the cult gathered. Victor Crow stood at the center, a heavy black rope coiled at his feet. Around him, his disciples knelt in silence, their faces obscured by veils, their hands clasped in reverence. A single body hung from a steel beam overhead, the cult's latest offering. The air was thick with incense, but it couldn't mask the stench of rot, blood, and mildew. Victor raised his hands. "She grows hungry," he announced, "and we must feed her again." The disciples began a low chant, their voices merging into a deep vibration that resonated through the hollow station walls. Victor approached the hanging body and whispered into its ear. "She is awake." The corpse twitched. Its neck, snapped beyond repair, cracked audibly as it turned to face Victor. Eyes, clouded and dead, now glowed faintly red. "Another has resisted," Victor said with disdain, "but we'll have them soon." The corpse smiled grotesquely. Black circle. Above ground, Lucas and Clara sat in Father Vaughn's study, which was lined with ancient tomes, yellowed scrolls, and talismans. "I need you to understand," Vaughn said, gesturing to a weathered map. "This isn't just superstition. The rope curse was born out of a historical atrocity." He traced a spot on the map, Eddington Village, a settlement destroyed over a century ago. The villagers conducted rope rituals to send spirits safely to the afterlife. But when outsiders mocked their practices and desecrated their sacred sites, something changed. A ritual was performed improperly, or perhaps intentionally corrupted. Instead of guiding souls, it trapped them. Clara frowned. Trapped them where? Here, Vaughn said gravely. Tethered to the mortal world through the rope. The longer the rope remains, the more souls it collects. Those souls become extensions of the curse. Clara shivered. And Victor Crow, where does he fit in? Noah answered, his voice heavy. He's the last bloodline descendant of the Eddington ritualists. He's obsessed with completing the chain, binding enough souls to force the boundary between life and death to collapse. If he succeeds, Vaughn added, no one dies properly anymore. Every soul gets trapped, forever. Silence hung between them until Clara broke it. Then we need to find him. Noah stood abruptly, determination returning to his eyes. We will, but first we need someone who knows the underworld of this city. Black Circle. That someone was Jonas Pike, an old contact of Noah's, a former cultist who escaped Victor Crow's clutches years ago. They found him in a decaying motel on the city's outskirts, paranoid and half-drunk. I told myself I'd never see your face again, Jonas muttered when he opened the door. His eyes darted nervously. If he knows you're here, you're already dead. We don't have time for games, Noah said firmly. We need to know where Victor is operating. Jonas laughed bitterly. You think I know? I left that madness behind. Clara stepped forward, showing Jonas the footage of Leela's possession and the hospital suicide. Jonas's face paled. He's accelerating. Accelerating what? Clara asked. Jonas looked them dead in the eye. The chain of 13, that's his goal. 13 linked suicides completed under the rope's curse and the barrier breaks. He was at 7 when I escaped. How many now? Noah asked grimly. Jonas hesitated. If he started again, we might already be past 10. Noah swore under his breath. Jonas finally relented. The cult ceremonies, they're happening underground. There's an old subway station, Station 9, sealed off decades ago. That's where they conduct the rites. Clara pulled up city blueprints on her phone. That place was buried after a cave-in. Jonas shook his head. They dug deeper, Victor made sure. Noah leaned in. You'll take us there. Jonas looked terrified. If I go back, I'm dead. We'll all be dead if you don't, Noah said coldly. Jonas swallowed hard, then nodded. Black Circle. That night the group ventured underground. Jonas led the way, flashlight trembling in his hand. As they descended into the tunnels, the air grew damp, heavy with rot and mildew. Graffiti littered the walls, but older markings, sigils, ropes painted in black and red, were visible beneath. Victor's signature, Jonas muttered. These marks keep the path hidden from outsiders. After an hour, they reached a rusted gate, beyond which lay a stairwell choked with debris. We're close, Jonas whispered. Noah paused, sensing a shift in the air. The temperature had dropped suddenly, and a pressure pushed against his temples. Then he heard it, the soft creaking of rope under tension, from above. He aimed his flashlight upward. Hanging from the steel beams overhead were bodies, dozens, their faces obscured, their forms swaying gently though the air was still. Clara gasped, they're fresh. Jonas trembled, they're part of the chain. The bodies stirred suddenly, necks twisting, faces turning down to stare directly at the intruders. Then they smiled. Run, Noah hissed. They sprinted down the tunnel as the hanged bodies began to jerk violently, ropes snapping as the corpses dropped to the ground one by one, moving like marionettes. Clara tripped, but Noah grabbed her, hauling her to her feet. Jonas led them through a narrow side passage just as the first corpse lunged, its neck grotesquely bent. They reached an old maintenance door. Jonas kicked it open, and they tumbled inside. The chamber beyond was vast, an old platform space, transformed into a temple of rope. Nooses hung from every rafter. Candles burned in a circle on the floor. At the center stood Victor Crow. He was waiting. "You shouldn't have come back, Jonas," Victor said softly, eyes cold and empty. Jonas raised a trembling hand. "We're stopping this." Victor smiled faintly. "You're too late." He gestured, and from the shadows, his disciples emerged, dozens of them, each with ropes coiled around their shoulders like vipers. Victor continued, "You've seen the chain grow, 13 souls, each one adding strength. Tonight the final links will be forged." Noah stepped forward, holding a protective talisman. "Not if I end it here." Victor laughed. "You're broken, Noah. The exorcist who couldn't even save his family. You think you can stop me?" Noah's hand shook, but he stood firm. "I'll try." Victor's eyes glinted. "Then let the chain decide." He snapped his fingers. The hanging corpses burst into the chamber, their lifeless forms moving with inhuman speed. The fight for the chain had begun. The old subway chamber echoed with screams. Noah stood in the middle of the crumbling platform, his protective talisman glowing faintly in his palm. The air was dense with rot and incense. The dead, the bodies that once hung from the ceiling, now swarmed toward them, limbs snapping, necks twisted, grins impossibly wide. Jonas Pike shoved Clara Reed behind a rusted pillar. "Stay down." Noah planted his feet, reciting an incantation under his breath. The talisman brightened, casting pale light across the advancing corpses. The first corpse lunged. Noah raised the talisman and pressed it to the creature's forehead. There was a sizzling sound, and the corpse convulsed, but it didn't fall. Victor Crow chuckled from his perch atop the altar. "Oh, Noah, you can't purify what has no soul." The creature clawed at Noah, tearing into his shoulder. He cried out but forced the talisman deeper. Finally, the corpse shuddered violently, black smoke pouring from its mouth as it crumpled to the ground. But more were coming. Clara pulled out her camera instinctively, recording as much as she could. It was her nature, capture everything, even in the face of death. But through the lens, she saw more than her eyes could register, shadows moving unnaturally fast, figures whispering just beyond the veil of the physical. "Noah," she yelled, "there's more than just the bodies there, wrapped in something." Noah turned briefly to look. "What do you see?" "Ropes. They're entangled with the dead, pulling them like puppets." Noah's mind raced. The rope wasn't just symbolic, it was literal. An ethereal rope from the spirit world controlling each corpse. Sever the rope, sever the control. He switched tactics, pulling a small blade from his satchel, a ceremonial dagger etched with symbols of severance. "Cover me," he shouted. Clara grabbed salt from his bag and scattered it in a wide arc. The bodies recoiled at first but kept advancing. Noah ran at the nearest corpse, ducked a wild swing, and slashed upward. The blade passed through the air but caught something invisible, a shimmering thread of light connecting the corpse to the ceiling. The thread snapped. The corpse collapsed instantly. "It's working," Clara yelled. But there were too many. Jonas, panting, eyes wild with terror, shouted, "We have to end this at the source." He pointed to Victor Crow, who stood surrounded by candles, holding the black ritual rope, the final link in the chain. Noah made for Victor, but the cult leader smiled thinly and whispered something into the rope. A shadow bloomed from the floor, rising like smoke, coalescing into a monstrous form. A woman's face sewn shut at the mouth, eyes empty sockets. Noah froze. He knew that face. It was his wife. "Noah," the shadow whispered directly into his mind, "you let me die." His grip on the dagger faltered. The chamber around him faded. He was back in that living room years ago, the failed exorcism, his wife screaming as the entity inside her crushed her throat with invisible force. His daughter's body limp in the corner. His fault. All his fault. He collapsed to his knees, paralyzed by guilt. Victor descended from the altar, rope in hand. "This is why you failed then, Noah, and why you'll fail now." He approached the broken exorcist, raising the rope high. Clara watched in horror, then remembered the camera. She aimed the lens directly at the shadow, and it recoiled, shrieking. Noah blinked, the vision shattering like glass. "What?" Clara didn't stop. She stepped forward, recording the shadow with steady hands. "You're afraid of being seen." Victor's smile vanished. "You've been hiding in whispers, in darkness," Clara said, emboldened. "But the camera shows the truth." The shadow hissed, smoke like tendrils whipping angrily. Noah stood shakily, gritting his teeth. "We finish this." He lunged at Victor, but the cult leader was ready. With a flick of the rope, he caught Noah around the neck, yanking him off his feet. The noose tightened. Noah clawed at it, gasping, his vision dimming. Clara ran forward, pouring salt water on the rope. It sizzled but held. Jonas grabbed the ceremonial dagger, and with a desperate cry, slashed at the rope binding Noah. The blade caught, the rope frayed. Noah fell, coughing violently. Victor stumbled back, the rope now weakened, its fibers smoking. "You can't stop me," Victor spat. "The chain is nearly complete." A deafening roar erupted from the shadowy entity, and the walls of the chamber began to quake. Loose stones fell, cracks snaking through the ceiling. Victor retreated deeper into the tunnel, dragging the weakened rope with him. The disciples followed, disappearing into the darkness. The shadow retreated with them, its form splintering, but its voice echoed. "You'll never sever the chain." Silence fell. Noah lay on the floor, gasping for air. Clara helped him sit up, her eyes filled with concern. "We almost had him," she said bitterly. Noah shook his head. "No, we're not ready." Jonas looked between them, panting. "There's only one place left, the origin." Clara frowned. "What do you mean?" "The monastery where the rope was first created, where the original ritual was done," Jonas explained. "Victor heading there, to finish the chain of 13. Noah wiped blood from his mouth, eyes hardening. "Then we go there." Black circle. Back in the collapsing chamber, Victor Crow stood before his disciples, rope in hand. His own blood dripped where the dagger had grazed him, but his eyes gleamed with manic purpose. "The chain will be completed," he whispered, "and they'll all join her in the end." He gazed into the darkness, where the shadow lingered, the twisted entity, smiling without a mouth. And he smiled back, because failure was never an option. The rope curse would thrive, and death would never be the end. The storm gathered above the hills when Noah Chambers, Clara Reed, and Jonas Pike reached the outskirts of the derelict monastery. Nestled in the shadows of Mount Evernight, the monastery was a ruin of stone walls and broken statues. Vines coiled over archways, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. This was where the rope was born, the original place of the ritual that had tethered the dead. Jonas paused at the overgrown entrance, visibly trembling. "I never thought I'd come back here." Noah scanned the perimeter. "This is the heart of it all." Jonas nodded. "Victor always said that the rope's first knot was tied here, the birthplace of the chain." Clara kept her camera ready. She didn't plan to stream this time. This was evidence, proof that the horror was real. As they stepped through the arch, the wind carried distant whispers. Not voices, but breath, like the land itself was exhaling centuries of rot. Inside, statues of cloaked monks lined the crumbling hallway, their faces eroded but their nooses carved in clear detail. Every column, Every stone was engraved with rope motifs. The deeper they ventured, the colder it became, a deathly chill that seemed to cling to their bones. In the central chamber stood an altar, blackened and cracked, and at its center, a pedestal where a rope had once been displayed. But it was empty. "He already took it," Jonas muttered. "Victor?" Clara asked. Noah nodded grimly. "He's preparing the final ritual." Clara circled the altar, her flashlight beam catching old blood stains around its base. Symbols painted in crimson told a story of a woman hung, not to kill her, but to bind her spirit. "What happened here?" Clara whispered. Jonas swallowed. They tried to trap death itself, thought they could use rope to leash the boundary between life and the afterlife. "And did they?" she asked. Jonas shook his head. "They failed, but they made something worse." Noah studied the inscriptions. The first soul, the one still trapped. Clara stepped closer. Who was it? Jonas hesitated. Her name was Elena Shaw, a seer. She was accused of leading people to kill themselves, but the truth is, she was the first to be sacrificed. Bound in rope, hung not to die, but to stay, she never left. A distant creak echoed like rope under strain. Then they saw her. At the far end of the chamber, partially hidden by crumbled stone, a figure swayed gently. A woman in a tattered dress, head bowed, neck encircled by an ancient rope. Her feet floated inches above the ground. Her mouth was sewn shut. Her eyes were gone, replaced by dark hollows that oozed shadow. "Elena Shaw," Noah breathed. Clara raised her camera, but the screen flickered violently, static overtaking the lens. Elena lifted her head, facing them though she had no eyes. And the whispers started. They seeped directly into their minds, words not spoken aloud but felt in the marrow of their bones. 13 links. The chain must be complete. Noah staggered back, head pounding. Blood dripped from his nose. Clara dropped to her knees, gasping, images flooding her mind, dozens of suicides, each one hanging, each face smiling after death. Jonas clutched his ears, screaming, "She's inside us." Noah summoned his strength, clutching his talisman, chanting an incantation of severance. The talisman glowed, weakly at first, then brighter as his voice steadied. Elena's form trembled, her sewn mouth quivering. Clara felt the pressure ease and staggered to her feet. What is she doing here if Victor has the rope? Jonas panted. "She's anchored here. He took a fragment, but the real curse, her spirit, never left." Noah finished the chant, and the figure of Elena dissipated like smoke, the whispers fatting with her. Silence returned. Jonas collapsed, weeping softly. "We're too late. Victor will finish it." Noah stared at the pedestal. "There's one thing left to do." He approached and found beneath the pedestal a hidden compartment. Inside, a journal, its leather cover warped but legible. He opened it. Pages of rituals, diagrams, knots, and incantations filled the book, but at the end was a passage. Only by severing the origin, the first rope, at the moment of the 13th link, can the chain be broken forever. Clara read over his shoulder. "The first rope, where is it?" Noah flipped the pages. A rough map was drawn. Tunnels beneath the monastery, leading to a cavern where the rope was buried, along with Elena's mortal remains. Jonas looked up, fear returning to his face. "Victor will go there. That's where he'll finish the ritual." Noah closed the journal. "Then we'll beat him to it." Clara touched his arm. "Are you sure? You barely survived the last confrontation." Noah's eyes burned with determination. "I let my family die because I was weak. I'm not making that mistake again." They lit torches from the remnants of the chamber and descended into the tunnels beneath the monastery. Each step down was colder, darker, the air too thin. The walls were slick with moisture, and every so often they heard the creaking of invisible ropes. They reached the cavern, an expansive hollow beneath the earth. In its center, a stone slab, and atop it, the first rope. Thick, black, almost alive, it pulsed as though breathing. Bones littered the floor, hundreds, maybe thousands. Victor Crow was already there. He stood over the slab, cultists surrounding him, candles flickering. "You're too late," Victor called, his voice echoing. "The 12th soul has fallen, the 13th waits." Noah stepped forward, talisman and dagger ready. "We end it here." Victor laughed. "You'll die here." At his gesture, the cultists attacked. Clara tossed salt bombs, pouches that burst in clouds of protective salt, creating a brief perimeter. Jonas swung a rusted pipe, knocking back the first disciple. Noah charged Victor, their bodies colliding, but Victor was stronger than he looked. He shoved Noah to the ground and raised a knife. But then a scream filled the cavern, a woman's scream. Clara turned and saw Leela Monroe, standing at the entrance, eyes wild, neck bruised but alive. She followed them. "No more," Leela screamed, throwing a lit torch onto the slab. The rope caught fire, shrieking as though alive. Victor roared, diving to smother the flames, but Noah tackled him, the two grappling fiercely. 13, Victor spat. "She's the 13th. Noah froze, realizing Victor meant Leela. But before Victor could act, Leela grabbed a shard of bone and stabbed it into the first rope, twisting hard. The rope split, the scream rising to a piercing shriek that shook the cavern. The cultists collapsed, their bodies twitching. The ceiling cracked, stone raining down. Victor screamed, "No, she was mine." Noah, wounded but alive, stood. Not anymore. With the rope split, the curse began unraveling, the spirits, the chain, the deaths, all dissipating. Victor lunged again, but Jonas struck him down with the pipe, and he lay still, finally defeated. The cavern trembled violently. It was collapsing. "Move," Noah shouted. They ran, dragging Leela, who was dazed but smiling faintly. They emerged just as the monastery crumbled entirely, dust and debris filling the sky. The rope curse was broken. But as Noah looked back, he heard it faintly, a whisper in the wind. One day, another rope will be tied. He knew some curses never truly die. But for now, they had one. The monastery was gone, a heap of dust, shattered stone, and buried nightmares. The dawn had barely broken when Noah, Clara, Leela, and Jonas sat near the crumbled ruins, catching their breath. The sky was gray, the horizon bruised with the last remnants of the storm that had battered the mountain all night. No one spoke for several minutes. They were too exhausted. Blood, dirt, and soot covered them all. Then Clara broke the silence. "Is it over?" Noah didn't answer immediately. He stood, looking back at the wreckage, the dust still hanging in the air like a ghost refusing to vanish. He touched the talisman around his neck, the one that had protected him barely, and closed his eyes. "We severed the rope," Noah said finally. "We broke the chain." Leela sat cross-legged, cradling her bruised wrists, eyes red but calm. "Then why do I still hear her?" Everyone turned to her. Noah knelt beside her. "What do you hear?" Leela stared at her palms, her voice thin. Whispers, faint, but there, she's still, somewhere. Jonas shook his head, rubbing his temples. "That's impossible. We split the first rope, the origin, it's dead." Noah's eyes darkened. "It should be, but the curse. It was never just the rope." Clara stepped closer, gripping her camera tightly. "Then what is it?" Noah stood, packing slowly. The rope was a tool, a chain, but the spirit, Alina Shaw, she was more than just a tethered soul. She became something else after death, something that feeds on connection, on attention. Clara's expression dropped. "Attention, like people watching." Noah nodded. Every suicide, every victim, every live stream, every viral clip fed her presence. The more people watched, the stronger she became. Clara's breath hitched. So by filming, by streaming, No, Noah interrupted gently. You exposed it, that matters, but she used it too. Clara looked at her camera, suddenly disgusted. She wanted to hurl it off the mountain. So how do we finish this? Jonas asked, wiping grime from his eyes. We killed Victor, burned the rope, what's left? Noah looked back at the ruins. Her body, Eleanor's remains, they were never destroyed. Jonas paled. We'll never reach them. The entire cavern collapsed. Noah shook his head. We don't have to dig. He pulled out the old journal they had recovered at the monastery, barely surviving the collapse. Flipping through, he stopped at the final page. Only the fire of remembrance can cleanse the root. The body and the chain must burn together, in view of those who remember her name. Clara's eyes widened. You mean, we need people to see it? Noah nodded. One last time, but on our terms. Black Circle. 2 nights later, they returned to the city. Clara worked tirelessly, editing all her footage, the suicides, the possessions, the rituals, the rope itself. She uploaded one video. The rope curse, the truth behind the suicides. We survived, but not all did. Watch, remember, and witness the end. The video spread faster than she expected, not because it was sensational, but because it was raw, unexplainable, real. People around the world watched. And that was what they needed. While the world watched, Noah, Clara, Jonas, and Leela stood at the site of the collapsed monastery, now marked by burned symbols, salt circles, and torches. In Noah's hand was a bundle of blackened remains, fragments of rope, bone, and dust. All that was left of Eleanor Shaw's mortal form, recovered painstakingly from the debris. Noah drenched the remains in sanctified oil. Once we light this, he said, there's no undoing it. Leela stepped forward, holding the torch. Let me do it. Noah hesitated, then nodded. Leela's eyes filled with tears, but her hand was steady as she set the torch to the bundle. The fire roared to life, unnaturally bright, unnaturally hot. The smoke rose in a column that seemed to pierce the sky itself. As the remains burned, the wind carried a scream, high, shrill, but not painful. It was a scream of release. The mountain shook just for a moment, and then it stopped. Clara's camera captured everything, broadcasting live. Noah whispered, "You're free now, Eleanor." And just like that, the air was still. The presence was gone, the whispers silenced. Leela exhaled, eyes wide. She's gone. Clara ended the stream. Her hands trembled, but she smiled weakly. It's done. Black Circle. Weeks passed. The suicide stopped. The footage remained online, archived, discussed, analyzed. Some believed, some doubted. But the message spread. Don't play with the rope. Don't look for it. Don't awaken what should stay dead. Noah packed his belongings into a small bag. He was leaving the city. His work here was done. But as he passed Clara's apartment one last time, she stopped him. "Where will you go?" she asked. "Wherever the dead don't stay dead," Noah said with a small, sad grin. She offered her hand. "If you ever need help." He shook it firmly. "I'll call." He turned and walked away into the morning haze. Clara watched him disappear down the street. And in her pocket, her phone vibrated, a notification from her YouTube. New comment. Did you see the shadow behind you in the last few seconds? Clara's heart skipped. She checked the footage. At the very end, just as the smoke dispersed, a figure stood among the trees, watching. Not Eleanor, someone else. She stared at it, unease crawling up her spine. And then she smiled bitterly. Some ropes are never fully cut.